Kitten Features, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in a student accommodation all the way in Scotland, and Wayne in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Show X on VTWProductions.com. You're listening live today at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT. And what is it today already? The 17th of January, 2016. Which, everyone, allows us to get into a special show this week that we had been threatening and promising for quite some time. That show this week will be essentially an all Star Wars spoiler show. You can see I've got my hoodie on for basically my Darth Vader hoodie to celebrate it. And we have a whole panel of people who are going to be joining us on the show today. So as we get things started, I'm trying to throw it out there right away, right up front. Yes, there will be spoilers. So if you have not seen the new Star Wars, please be aware that you will likely learn things that you maybe weren't sure you wanted to know this show. All right? Everybody ready for that? I don't want it to suddenly surprise people that, you know, things are somehow changing or whatever. I just want everyone to be ready. I don't want to hear about it after the fact that, oh my gosh, I wasn't ready, I didn't know what you were doing, and those kind of things. So, throwing that out there, hopefully everybody's got it. Are we set? All right. Now the stage is set. Let me talk about who we have on the show. And this is likely to, or could, change as we go forward. But right now, joining us via a Google Hangout. And if you would like to join into the discussion with the Google Hangout, please message me directly on IRC. Or I have it up on the email too, where you can jump in and let me know you'd like to go, and I will send you the link to the Google Hangout. Right now, the four of us in here, we have, of course, our good friend Ken, who is joining us from across the pond. Ken, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm drinking mead, so I'm very happy. I'm feeling my Nordic blood flowing through my veins today.
That's interesting. I myself am also drinking mead.
Are you actually? Actual mead?
Yes. I actually
have We're both actually drinking mead.
I have mead today. It is a Meadery of the Rockies mead. A nice, straightforward honey brand.
Mead.
It is mead. We know how to make good honey wine here.
That's not mead.
Mead is. Anyhow. Oh, and I'm hoping this doesn't die here, as one of my programs is trying to freak out for the Windows audio, so hopefully this continues. Also, we are joined this week by our good friend Kur0. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good.
Outstanding. As well as our good friend Hando. Hando, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm consuming the beverage of my ancient people. I'm drinking bathtub gin.
Oh, jeez. Ouch.
I'm kidding.
That sounds infinitely painful to be doing any kind of gin made out of, basically moonshine, if you will. So, oi. So essentially, this entire episode is going to be filled in as I drop the drop-in of
Functional deviations.
nothing but us discussing some dysfunctional deviations for all things Star Wars. So, going to go ahead and get things kicked right off with talking about that we are going into Star Wars The Force Awakens. And so with this, I'm hoping I know everybody here on the chat has had a chance to see the movie, correct?
Yep. That is correct.
All right, outstanding. So, I'm trying to think how to best frame the beginning of the discussion. Essentially, this movie takes place very nearly the same time frame after the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6, in that it's basically 30-some years since the end of Star Wars Return of the Jedi. With it, and I should look at the actual scroll, they have the synopsis of the movie for those who aren't aware, because it's the initial scroll, essentially. Unless someone else has it up. I need to have the links for everything. And in it, it talks about Star Wars as being... There we go. Star Wars The Force Awakens. The synopsis is... 3 decades after the defeat of the Galactic Empire, a new threat arises. The First Order attempts to rule the galaxy, and only a ragtag group of heroes can stop them, along with the help of the Resistance. And so as it goes into the original scroll, I mean, we see right away that it talks about it's that far later, and we're going in where, you know, General Leia Organa has sent her best pilot, Poe Daring, to retrieve special information to help us find out the whereabouts of a missing Luke Skywalker. And in doing so, he goes to the planet of Jakku to retrieve this data. And that's kind of how things start, right after the epic music and the saying of Star Wars and it banging in, and we're into the movie. So, I think people have basically heard in general that I've talked about in the past that I thought the production value of the movie was very good. Just to get that out of the way right up front, that it was well acted, well filmed, the effects were great, things like that. For just like the production of a movie, it was really good.
You gotta say, but like nowadays, when you see these AAA, fantastic, top tier, blockbuster films that are well produced, like anything that is Avenger related, or anything that is Star Wars related, or anything that's Harry Potter related or Lord of the Rings, you will find, regardless of the plot, you will enjoy the production value just because they put literally millions and millions of dollars into it. And it's difficult for it to be bad at that point for production value. You'll find the visual and audio effects throughout to be stunning, absolutely beautiful and well produced. And, you know, if there's one thing slightly wrong, they'll just do it again. They've got the budget. They'll just fix it again and again and again until it is perfect. So whether the plot's good or not, that's something we can get into later. But I think, yeah, I totally agree with you that the production value in this film is 10 out of 10. It's fantastic.
It makes me think, I wonder how many times they actually had to do the BB-8 giving the thumbs up. Like, you know that was probably, no, take 27, we got to get this right.
Take 27, BB-8's messing around again. He's flipping the finger instead of doing the thumb.
Yeah, right. No, he flashed the peace sign there. No, do it again.
You know, that's one of those things that I'm actually quite looking forward to what'll come out from outtakes and stuff like that from this movie. Because all the previous ones had it. It'll be interesting to kind of see that discussion about, you know, how many takes did they have to do and things, how many things got to, you know, messed up a few times, since there were more practical effects in this movie than there were digital, like there were in the prequels, or I should actually start calling those like the movies that shall never be named again.
Well, I like the fact there was almost no reference to them either, by the way. That was pretty sweet.
What, was there even a reference to them?
I don't know. I don't think there was. I'm pretty sure they just referenced there was like major referencing to the last three films that they did.
Tons of throwbacks to the original trilogy. And there was some discussion and argument on some of the articles out there because, as I talked about before, a lot of people have jumped into this movie where they wanted to be the guy that had whatever opinion it was about the movie that wasn't up to this norm, the standard, or what everyone else is saying. As I'm saying, the hipster out there who wants to be the guy who thought they or not.
It's going to come out before, sooner rather than later. So I went to this with my wife. It was Turkey. She was very excited and took me on a date to go see Star Wars, and I was really excited. I was expecting it. When the start rolling, like the sequence started rolling down the screen, these words coming down from space. I feel your nostalgic presence there, Wayne. I looked at it and I just went, oh, that when I was a kid. Now I was 23, admit, but still, it was like, man, actually seeing this in cinema. I think I ever would. That's really nice.
Could I mention a great takeout that I heard on other podcasts? There was a rumor going around that the opening shot, well, you know how they always do it, it's always a spaceship. There was a rumor going around that they were going to open it up. What's going to be
guys, hold on just a second. I'm having part where everything's trying to robot on me.
Oh, shite.
It's you guys. No, this is one of those that happens when one thing with the Google Hangout, everything else. It's making me like. I don't want
this on Skype. Maybe better.
We need to do it over instead because it's killing me over.
That's okay. It would take a couple to fix up, but too bad.
All right, so just a second. Kill this Google Hangout. I thought it would be a good chance. It's failed for me. And so everyone, check to the VTW Skype, and we'll just go it there. As it cannot get away, and we'll do this with the.
Right, so I went and saw it this week, on Wednesday, I think, with the missus, and she bought me tickets and stuff, and that's what I said before. And I have to confess, because I went in there all teary-eyed and really excited about seeing one of my favorite films of all time, and then at the end, she said, it was okay.
Oh, Kitten Feature said that.
Yeah. Not me.
You've said before though that she's not a Star Wars person, right?
She's not even a space fan. Like, she can't even stand space. Like, anything space-like she doesn't enjoy. So it's pretty spacey, considering it's called Star Wars. So in general, it's not really her kind of thing. But she said she enjoyed it for the production value, linking back into what we were saying earlier. So the production value is definitely good enough that even somebody who doesn't like Star Wars or space stuff can say, yeah, it was alright. So that's a good thing, at least. I mean,
she's got the beats of the story, though, right? She generally has an idea of what's going on.
Probably, yeah. Okay. And also her actual manager at work, who's a 23-year-old girl, really intelligent, really wise girl, and she hated it. she really couldn't stand Star Wars, the latest one. She said it was. I fell asleep halfway through.
23-year-old manager is an oxymoron.
To be fair, she's a supervisor technically, I should say. Supervisor.
She's the lead.
Yeah,
That's the proper term, the lead.
That's interesting. I've heard a lot of conflicting reports around the net as well, but we'll get to all that as well. I mean, but can I tell you guys my view on the overall thing? What I thought of the film?
Yes.
So, finally, actually got to see it. Finally, after weeks of waiting. So my hopes were already really high after hearing what Wayne said about it and hearing what everybody else said about it. I was pretty excited, and so I sat down, watched the whole thing, got outside, and I turned to Kitten and said, "Better than all the other Star Wars films ever." That's my favorite one so far. That's my favorite one, and at least somewhere in my top 5 films of all time.
Right.
Up there with like The Matrix and with like Monty Python and yeah, it's up there. I think there was a lot of tropes and there was a few things wrong with the film they could have improved. But some of it I had to give leeway because they had to reference back to the original trilogy, I should say, repeatedly.
Yeah.
In order to make the fans of the original series enjoy this film. So they had to have as many of the previous actors and actresses as possible. They had to have all of the scenery and the ships and the planets from old films in there as much as possible.
You know what it was
and
like?
I felt like it was overdone to that sense. But they had to make the old Star Wars fans enjoy it. Now the next 2 films are going to be the new stuff, I think. I think this film was a platform for the trilogy. It's the link between the original trilogy and this new trilogy.
It's like when you go to a symphony and you hear the overture. You hear a little bit of piece of everything that's going to be in the rest of the presentation, and I think that's how they went with this first movie.
That's a very accurate representation, definitely, yeah. Because they really did link with... And again, ignoring the middle trilogy, right? Ignoring the crap trilogy. The original 3 and the final 3, hopefully, are going to be the things we enjoy. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the middle 3 for their visual representations. I enjoyed them as almost fan creations, as if it wasn't actually Star Wars, as if it was something somebody
Now that's a good way of looking at those.
Yeah, that's how I enjoyed them. I don't see them as legitimate. I'm just like, oh look, there's Darth Maul. He's cool, and that's about it.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth.
So we discussed the production value and how it was all good. Okay, first of all, how many times have you guys seen the film?
1.
I've only seen it once
okay,
myself.
so it was 1.
I've seen it 3
so
times
3 of us
now.
have 1. 3 times.
I would
I'm gonna
love
see
to
it
see it
tomorrow.
again.
I
would see it many times.
Yep, I'm going to pay to see it again, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going tomorrow.
Well, okay, so there's something to be said about that because one of the things that, and one of my friends actually, my friend Ian, he's seen it 5 times now, I think. One of the times in IMAX and one time in regular, and the other 3 times in just regular 3D. And so with all that, he just went nuts on it and really enjoyed it. And he believes he's seen it, every time he's seen it, he's enjoyed it more. I myself, like the first time I saw it, I loved it. And again, I kind of mentioned I was punch drunk after being in a theater for 24 hours. And so with that, I can kind of like say, you know, I may not have been in the right frame of mind, but I really, really, really enjoyed it. And so
I'm envious of the way you did it. I'm envious of the way you kind of bought in that movie with the 24-hour marathon.
No, it was awesome because I mean I came out of it with the sense of like, you know, wow, that so made up for everything that I had disliked about the prequels. And with that, I mean that in a way I think was kind of the point of this movie, as you're saying, Ken. They're doing everything they could to like lose the ones that Lucas made for the prequels to say this one we're doing is not that, right? This is absolutely not the prequels. This is a follow-on to the original trilogy, which everybody unanimously loved, or at least more so. You know, all the original fans and even people that have gone back and watched have enjoyed significantly. And so they really did do a hard push to say that's what we're doing. But for myself, the second time I watched it, I found other details in it that I had seen before or had missed before based on some of the internet traffic and things I'd heard. Things like all the people that had cameos in the movie or were somehow related or part of the movie that we maybe did not see initially.
So many Easter eggs.
As
I've
well
not
as,
looked into them, to be honest. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys.
Okay, as well as a lot of things that were throwbacks to, like you said, the original trilogy. There are also people who made the argument that there was a lot of stuff thrown back to the prequels, but I still have yet to see anything in the movies that actually spoke to the prequels.
I haven't watched those enough to even notice anything.
Well, part of it came from, I'd only watched the prequels maybe twice, most, prior. Most of them only once, because afterwards I was just like, I really don't want to see them again. But going through the 24-hour marathon, I got to see the prequels in order and followed by, unfortunately, the enhanced versions of the originals going into the new one. And so it made it very in my face, like, this is what's happening, this is what's changed, right? It was right there for me to go like, what? And in seeing that, it made it even more so how bad the prequels were, other than essentially the representation of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Maul. Beyond that, it's just terrible. Anyhow, so that's happened. So with this one, I saw more of the details and things that were thrown out. There are callbacks to the original. Okay, so we'll go with this one. We talked about how this one ties directly into the originals. It's 30 years later, convenient time frame, as Shady had said, for the timing between for the actors to age accordingly, as well as for a lot of plot elements that we have not seen yet to develop. But in the throwback piece, some of the things, and see if, did you guys see these things, right? In fact, I should bring up like an official list of, but the ones I definitely noticed, and correct me if you see more, there was a throwback to the original ones in the sense of the little mouse droids. There's a scene where the little black droids that you usually see skirting around on the ground, that the stormtroopers would be following in the Death Star, stuff like that. When they first land back onto their main station, it was either the station or their Star Destroyer, and they're getting out. I think it's when they first do it and they're getting out. You see one of these little mouse droids go and like take off across the background. So that was just a quick throwback, right?
Yeah.
There was throwbacks, and again, this is all spoilers, anybody, if you haven't seen it. On the Millennium Falcon, there was this throwback when, Chewie's hurt and he's getting helped, and Finn is trying to help him, and they goes in quickly, he's looking through a bag for medical supplies, and he pulls out the training droid, right? The little training bot that Luke had first used. It's for a half moment, he looks at it and just tosses it aside, right? Like, what's this?
I thought I also heard someone say that there was a Doctor Who object in with that. I don't know if that's true, though.
That I have not seen, or I did not know about. I at least did not notice. And
I did notice, well, okay, so some of the more obvious ones, which are probably a bit too obvious for you to even mention. But at the very start, when they first land on, what's the planet's name?
Jakku.
Jakku. When they first land on Jakku, when you first see the Star Destroyer in the background,
yeah.
That's obviously a huge reference to previous
so
films.
what they're kind of saying with those ones, right, is that there is a battle that happened, right, and went on in the past somewhere that again, this is teased to plot elements. But so some of the more throwbacky things are, direct references to the originals, essentially.
Well, I was going to say the Millennium Falcon as well. As soon as I saw that, I was like,
oh man, yeah.
Okay, so being that you guys saw it once.
I had like a tear when I saw the Millennium Falcon. It's like, oh my god.
So did you notice it when they first were running by and they pan as they're running, and there's like, we need to get out of here, and they go to the quad jumper? In that first scene where it flies by to the quad jumper, you see it there.
And it says specifically, we won't take that one, it's trash. That's what they say.
Yeah, it's garbage.
Yeah.
And when they did that pan, though, if you don't recognize or didn't know that was the Falcon, a lot of people miss it until they go back to it, right? But those are some of the elements they had right there, the timing and everything in that. What are some of the other things they had as throwbacks? So, of course, the flashback scene where they did the lightsaber and all that kind of things. They also had, though, characters from... let's see, what are they? So, some of the other droid stuff. So, when they first go to the junk dealer, they have a lot of the droids that you saw in the original trilogy. The big box droid with the two legs.
Oh, the Gonk droid.
Yep, the Gonk droid. They had essentially that droid that had like the clear dome top in it, the little bubbling kind of thing, stuff walking about in one scene. So they actually did a lot of callbacks with droids and stuff throughout, which were really slick. What else?
Those are the only actors that didn't age,
Yeah. Let's see, what other ones do they do callbacks? I'm gonna have to go back and remember. But other than direct ties and that, just the original stuff happened. But there were a lot of those little scenes where it's just kind of like, oh, did you see that? And that was a straight throwback to the original series. Even some of the language said where you have Han Solo saying like, I've got a bad feeling about this. Stuff stuff like that. They kind of do those tiebacks. All right. So we get into it.
So before we go any further, first of all, we should mention periodically this is a spoiler-filled show, by the way.
All spoilers.
If
all
you have
spoilers.
constant spoilers. Now, I'm saying this now specifically because I want to bring up the main plot line this early. I want to bring up the biggest
Let's
thing.
do it.
So, okay. First of all, I read this on an internet image board somewhere. On the day the Star Wars was first released, I read the spoiler by mistake. I read what was going to happen, and so I knew. Okay, last chance, guys. If you're listening in, this is a spoiler-filled show. I do not want to mention
He's
this.
gonna drop the nuke.
Oh man!
Yeah, right
here
up
we
front,
go.
the big one.
Get it out of the way.
I hope anybody out there is diving towards their speakers for the mute button right now. So when Han Solo dies, even just saying that makes me sad, by the way.
Yeah.
I feel a pang of emotion saying that. It's ridiculous. When that fictional character made decades ago...
Who was originally panning as an actor to die in Empire Strikes Back when he got turned into carbonite.
Come on, the greatest space cowboy ever.
Well, he apparently, I heard he didn't even want to be in this film. So
Basically, it was a service to the fans. And
I heard that too.
All right.
It was good of him.
So you talk about Han Solo dying, and finish that thought, Ken, because I have a whole thing to talk about that line of where.
I've got a lot to talk about.
Okay. So that's the
so
bomb,
first
right?
of all,
the bomb is that he dies, right? That
Yeah.
Han Solo dies. They do it towards the very end of the movie, and it's kind of coming. Now, yeah, just like Copy said, and anyone who's really following, you could see it coming. Like you knew it was happening.
Oh, yeah.
It was building up to it, and if you pay attention to the plot, I think it's absolutely necessary. But going into it, just as a heads up for anyone who really feels about like, oh my God, Han died. Why? If you look at the whole movie, this is a swan song to Han Solo.
Yeah.
Because you get more like actual face time and screen time with him and Chewbacca than you really didn't get in any of the others, where he is a focal point. And in doing so, they actually show their interactions, more humor between the two, and a lot of these touching moments of kind of these little subtle things that happen that really draw you into how like deep a character Han Solo really is. And so they give him so much time to kind of say goodbye to the character, in my opinion. You know, I think they really do spend some good elements on there.
You
But
can tell it's coming the whole film, though. Like,
if you really watch it, it builds to it. But Ken, go ahead. You were saying you have a ton to go into.
well, I did know, right? Because I read the spoiler before, and on the first day of Star Wars release, probably when Wayne was seeing it, actually, I read on there somewhere. Just like I clicked on a random thing, like a tweet or something. I can't remember where I saw it, and it just said, "Han Solo dies to his son," and I was like, first of all, he has a son, and he dies to his son. God damn it!
Oh,
really don't
hardest
yeah.
to avoid
Spoiling it.
spoilers.
if
But
you're on
people-
Facebook, it's already been spoiled for you like 15 times over by now.
People
Well, as a-
try
well,
intentionally to be assholes.
But I will say this.
I unfriended 3 people who said minor things about Star Wars. I'm talking
Good,
minor
good.
things. Like, I saw it, and I loved the scene where very minor plot point. And I'm like, unfriend. You're no longer my friend. I don't like you anymore.
Hey, but I do want to give
Dick in my
credit.
book.
I do want to give credit to all the geeks out there, who, for the most part, did an amazing job not spoiling the movie. Because for
What a
as big a
collective
movie
effort that
this
was.
is, right? Because they've made over $1 billion worldwide with this movie, and for the most part, nobody was spoiling it because so many people had that same mindset that I was trying to push to everyone, which is let other people experience these things for themselves for the first time, right? Let
Nerds
them
around the
do that.
world did good.
And for the most part, they really did. There were some asshats out there who got, who couldn't help themselves, but to be those a-holes that wanted to ruin it for everyone else. And that sucks. That really sucks.
So I did do a Facebook status as soon as I saw Star Wars. Let me read it to you. I found it exactly. This is how you talk about Star Wars publicly before there's a spoiler allowed podcast. Finally seen Star Wars. That's it. That's all I said. That's it. Nothing else. Anything else would be a spoiler. I
how
have
you do it.
seen it. That's it. I didn't say I enjoyed it. I didn't say I love the bit where Han Solo dies.
Yeah,
I
nothing
just
else
said
actually talking to what's going on.
There
Just
is
like
a film
I saw
that I
it.
have seen. That's
Yep.
it.
Yep. All right.
That's how it's done.
So we talk about that. So let's go into opinions of characters real quick, guys. And then so we can really focus on plot points because that's what we've been avoiding. All right, so main
and then
character.
Then we can go into conspiracy theories, correct?
Yes. Main character Rey. What do you guys think of Rey as a whole?
I like Rey, but she's a Han Solo replacement, I kind of feel.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
So I feel like they pushed a couple of agendas a fair bit, but not too much. So first of all, I don't know how much of you guys follow like Tumblr posts and Twitter, or
Never
the
Tumblr.
extreme left wing of those places. I don't mean to get too political here, but the main characters of this film were, for the first time ever, a female and a black lead.
There's the one trope that came out on memes that basically said Hollywood for years has told us that no movie could be successful with a female lead and a black lead, and this made over $1 billion. Yay. My thought on that is that we're past a lot of those kind of things, those old mentalities, but people who are focused on those kind of issues are using this as one of their calling points to be like, aha, rally point. It's like,
That's
yeah,
my
fine,
point.
whatever, I don't care.
The point is, those actors were so good, I not only I barely noticed. I was like, I suppose technically that is a black guy and technically a female lead. Doesn't matter. They're human beings who are
it's part
good
of the
actors
plot
and
point
actresses.
stuff, and that's what matters. Well, although I did notice with Finn specifically in the Stormtrooper outfit, because and it's good stuff, but Stormtrooper with that ass. Because you look at all the other Stormtrooper outfits, and you see him specifically walking, you can see his body frame very specifically different than a lot of the other Stormtroopers they have there. I was like, that's a good thing they can custom make that armor for everyone now.
Imagine if they put him with the actual stormtrooper stand-ins that they had in the original movie. All the nerdy, skinny guys that were like, the guys that were working on the models.
Oh yeah. No, I thought that was funny though. Yeah. Okay. So Rey. So as lead characters, I did great, and that's why I say the acting as a part across the board was amazing. I also agree. I loved Rey. And I thought she really pulled off the roles of being someone who's lost, but really focusing on I want to get back to my family, but I have to wait for them to come get me, but I'm gonna make it on my own, and I'm a survivor. And so I love that aspect, right? As well as and so go ahead. I'll let anyone comment on that before I move on.
Well, they actually built her up as a really, really strong character, like really early in the film, which is a good thing. I like seeing her story early on.
Well, and not as a creationist story, just showing her reacting to things as they were doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
I had heard that there was parts of the movie, or maybe it's in the comic book, that Rey was actually working on the Falcon for that, the guy that was passing out the rations, so that's why she knew it so well. That's why, and she also spent a lot of time. She had a flight simulator that she would use and so that's why she's able to pilot some of these ships.
One of the discussions that happened is that if you talk, as I've had this with my cousin a lot, which is if you go by the movies alone, then as we get into the plot, there's a lot of things that will be potentially weakly represented in the plot line. And so one of the things that happened is they came out with this book, which I believe is called Aftermath or something like that. But the book itself is supposedly a lead-in or a bridge between the original trilogy and this movie coming in. And in it talks about some of the relationship between Finn and the other stormtroopers, specifically the ones called out, the one who dies and puts blood on his face being Slips, and the one that he fights with the stun baton being Nines, and talk about his relationship with the commander gal and everything like that. And so it kind of sets up some things. The challenge is, I've heard the book one is bad, that is poorly written, and almost said that it feels like they were trying to forcibly get it out there in time for the movie to try to add some of those details, right? Because, and as my cousin said, there's a chance where this movie I feel was so well made that I would have watched it if it was 3 hours long instead of just 2.
Yeah.
And they could have probably kept a lot more content in. However, I believe the studio chose to keep it at 2 because that's the formula that every single Star Wars movie has had.
Oh yeah, they've had every single film within 2 minutes of
basically
full length, haven't they?
Within like 5 or 10 minutes of the total length, every single movie throughout all 6 that existed before and the new one. And so I think that was their goal, was to try to keep it right in line, because I would have watched 4 hours of this movie, right? For how well made it was. And so I think that was a big part of it. The other piece, though, is... Oh, go ahead, Ken.
Sorry, speaking of Rey, I fair enough if in the book that they said that she got these skills to do with that ship specifically through that and the flight sim and through working on the ship previously. I understand that she would be a close combat kind of person. She lives on a rough planet full of criminals, right?
Yeah,
she has to
everyone
learn to
looking at
defend
themselves.
herself, so that makes sense as well. Totally okay with her being able to kick some guy's ass.
Yep.
But it's the conglomeration of, oh yeah, I can just wing the Force. I can fly any ship I get into. I'm also a technician, and I'm good at combat. I mean, most people are lucky to just be a Jedi. She's got all 4 of these things going for her.
You know what I
She's a pretty
appreciate?
skilled person. It's a bit ridiculous, to be honest.
What I really
kind of
like-
wish they just, they could at least pushed it more for like, oh, the Force is guiding her, versus, oh yeah, she's just good at everything.
So I will tell you that one of the things that I noted from that is essentially that I truly believe this is one of the first times they showed someone truly being guided by the Force. That it wasn't just,
I suppose she had to be.
them using the Force to do their will. This is one of those plot points I felt. But actually the Force guiding her. And they allude to that several times. In fact, when I went and saw it again yesterday, I made pages of notes based on what I was seeing in it, because my third time I didn't go just to enjoy it. I really did to prep for the show to say, like, all right, how did this work? And, so... Oh, that's some of the... Yes, there's some conspiracy there. But the whole Rebel pilot... the whole her being a great pilot, right? There's some discussion that she has her machine she flies, that she may have had interaction with the Falcon and other things like that, and probably why she calls it garbage. Although she hadn't actually flown it because it hadn't flown for years. But there's also the part that I truly believe she is being guided by the Force throughout. And you see little hints of it for her character in the plot where, she's doing these crazy dangerous things, climbing these massive things all on her own safely, and all this by herself. She's kind of aware of stuff going on around her more so than others. She fights remarkably well, which doesn't necessarily have to be Force-driven. But there's examples of her using the Force even before she knows what she's doing. And she admits to it when she does fly the Falcon. And they get around and do all this stuff. She's like, how'd you do that? I don't know. How'd you do that? I just, where they were even saying that they basically were lucky and things were helping them. And that she says multiple times in the movie when she's trying to fix stuff, almost like she does it without realizing why she's doing that or why she's saying it. Knowledge just comes to her. And I think that's an important plot point, because she is the, most Force-attuned person or entity we've ever seen in a Star Wars movie. She comes in there like, I got this. It's built in. Go ahead.
It shouldn't be, though.
Why not?
We were told, literally, there is one other very obvious Force user who was supposed to be destined to be the one who has the most feeling, understanding, and power of the Force ever. He was the one to bring balance to the Force.
Yes.
And he did. And yet, this new one comes around who without any training, can pick up a lightsaber from afar.
You're right.
Being somebody who's at least semi-trained with the Force of the
Sith. Here's the key. The elements that allow for Rey to use her Force powers, because this is a huge plot point that a lot of people tried to poke holes in and say was a misstep in the movie. She's so Force attuned because it's likely, we don't know for sure, but I have my obvious theories about it that everyone else does. Her lineage being that she probably has very strong blood, right? As
we're waiting
there,
for that.
hashtag obvious Luke's child. But in that, and Luke coming from the one who brought balance to Force by being Vader's son, that while Anakin originally was supposedly conceived by the Force, although I dismiss the prequels, but I'm saying that, it started with that, and now it's just continued to increase with each generation, which also speaks to why Kylo Ren has so much raw potential. Coming down a bloodline the same bloodline, right? Coming from Leia, who was also Anakin's daughter, and then coming down through Han and Leia to be Kylo Ren, to be Ben, and in doing so has an equal potential for the level of the Force. Difference being, Ben, Ben Solo, or Kylo Ren, essentially having been brought up with some level of training under Luke. We know that because as he got in there with the, before Knights of the Ren, when he was the pinnacle reason as to why Luke had to leave, that he was getting training, right? He had a whole bunch of raw talent, and in the movie itself, they talk about he had too much Vader in him, and that, Grand Emperor, or whatever, the Grand Supreme Leader Snoke, specifically to help turn him to the dark side, right? So he's had elements of training and things like that, but also, I believe, a lot of raw power. Difference being, and we don't know what Rey's past, other than she came on a Jakku, and that she has she's very attuned to the Force. A lot of raw
And that there is a mystical family that we're going to come get her one day, and we don't know who it is. It feels like such an obvious plot point to me. Like,
it does.
Oh, we don't know, and she's really powerful with the Force.
Okay,
who could it be?
So it does, and it's funny because actually I got a message from Ursi, who threw out his own plot point for that. That's like a conspiracy theory thing for her that I thought was entertaining. That I'll bring up later. And to help set the stage for this, for everyone who's listening, one of the things I truly believe is the truth of this movie, or the purpose behind it, is this is the setup for the next however many movies. Because Disney is looking at this as a franchise, and I keep equating it to the Marvel series. I keep doing that because in Marvel, they saw the potential for all these different films, TV, things like that, put into theme parks, all that kind of stuff to make a ton of money off of. We know that Disney is taking and rebuilding their theme parks with Star Wars parks. You don't do that unless you have a long-term goal, right? Some kind of vision that says that we are going to do a lot with this franchise.
I would totally go to a Star Wars park.
Did you guys hear what they're getting rid of in Disneyland to make room for the Star Wars exhibit?
I have not, but I was assuming it was some of old Tomorrowland that's not as Tomorrowland.
No, it's the I think they said it's Huckleberry Finn Island or some kind of it's some kind of either cowboy ranch or something having to do with pop culture from generations ago.
Interesting. Well, because if it's Huck Finn's Island, that was a kid's park anyways in the middle of the lake there in Disneyland, and that'd be interesting. I don't know. I haven't followed specifically what they're doing yet, and so it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they come out with, because I'll tell you, as soon as it's open, my ass is going. Because I love me some Star Tours. I love Disneyland anyways, and I know by the time it's ready, ticket prices will be $150 a person, but I will go see that, right? That'll be amazing.
That'd be the one thing I'd go there for.
It would be quite good.
The one thing.
So beyond that, though, again, the plot points, they're setting this thing up, right? So I say that to help talk more of the plot, where it's going to continue to go further with they're setting up more. And that's why I will argue as we go into more plot, we don't see answers to everything that's kind of hinted at, because my expectation is we're going to get a lot more backstory and history in the future movies. They have to. If they don't, then they really do have a failure there. But they have to get they have to reach out to a whole lot of things and discuss the stuff that they basically hinted at here in this movie. So as we talk about with Rey, we know she's got this massive potential with the Force with her. They talk about it in the movie about her getting told or doing things that she doesn't even know why she's doing it or what's causing her to do it. She just knows. She has that affinity. She just kind of does it. And she's being guided. She's being led down that path.
I did like the one, she did have one fault, in the sense that her emotions frequently overrid her what she should do
or something.
Like what was the old lady with the glasses called?
Maz.
Yeah.
Maz. Okay. When Maz said to her, "Here's your lightsaber. You should take it. You're destined for it." Yada yada yada. And she went, "No, I'm scared of it," and ran out the building.
Yeah.
I
want
mean,
nothing to
that
do
was
with this.
childish, silly, and immature of her to do. But it was a fault, and I appreciated that because she didn't have any yet. So she needed one. So I'm glad she did something silly. It was nice.
So yeah, there is a lot of stuff where it was kind of like, I don't know. People argue that it's maybe convenient and such, but I actually loved Rey as a character because the whole point, and this kind of talks is this movie being named The Force Awakens, and they mentioned it in the movie too, where basically when Kylo and Snoke are talking and they say that, have you felt that there was awakening in the Force? And it's all talking about Rey, essentially, right? That Rey is coming up and finally tapping into the Force with more knowledge or more awareness than ever before. So didn't bother me at all. And, so that speaks to who Rey is. We talk about who's her family line, right? One of the things I'll bring up there is that a lot of people argue that Rey could have been, because everyone's speculating this is part of the controversy, right? That she could have been Han Solo and Leia's daughter as well, and like another child. A lot of people have said that. People have argued that she could be Ben Kenobi's child in some sense. And so just real quick to debunk all that, Ben Kenobi was too damn old to father Rey and died before in the middle of action. And for as many years later as this is, by the time Obi-Wan died to where Rey would be, she'd be in her 30s. Not as she looks to me
maybe
like...
she's Yoda's Force child.
Yeah, it could be Yoda. Kuro, you are noisy as all get out. My goodness. You and that
bad.
keyboard and your vaping.
You can hear the vape. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, so sensitive.
That
so
sounds like a really
sensitive, my
bad
Padawan.
ad slogan. Hear the vape.
But no, the other thing there is that, so can't be Ben Kenobi's, cannot be. You know, just timeline would not work out unless they do some silly nonsense.
I have a whole thing about this that I actually came up with in my own head. For some reason, I come up with these things while I'm doing dishes, but I have stuff to say about this. I could wait till later. It doesn't have to be now.
Oh,
No, go on, please.
Oh no, I have like a 15-minute presentation. Should I do it now?
Well, okay, so real quick
Please do.
online with this. I'll say Ursi's thing that he had real quick was, he said, ready to blow your mind, says, so the Force is out of its effing mind, or it's done. It's done giving Fs. It says the Force is done giving Fs, and so and because it's mad at all the family screwing up stuff, the ones that are traditionally Force families. And so it says, instead of having Force potentials he passes on from parents to child, the Force has now selected a bunch of young women with the potential to be Force users, and it will awaken one of them at a time. When the awoken dies, another potential Force user awakens, and the cycle continues. So he's saying, yeah, it's another Force baby, and they just keep happening. That was Ursi's attempt to be like, aha! All right. Hondo, go ahead and give us some beats. Give us your dissertation on what you believe is happening here.
Okay, here we go. When Rey and Kylo are battling in the forest, in the snow, we see that Luke's lightsaber goes flying out of somewhere, lands in the snow, blade down, and Kylo attempts to pick it up with the Force.
You see him reaching out.
He's reaching out with the Force, attempting to pick it up. It waves around a little bit. He's confused, waves around a little bit more. He tries again. It goes flying past him and into Rey's hand. Now, first of all, this is a great reference to the Sword and the Stone legend, King Arthur and all that. With that being said, if that's what it's referring to, then Kylo is not worthy of that sword. Rey is, right? Because it's Luke's sword, and it goes flying into the rightful heir, Rey. Question for you. What color is Luke's sword?
Luke's is blue. The blade.
What color is Luke's sword?
Luke's blade is blue.
Is that Luke's sword, or is that Anakin's sword? Luke's sword is green.
Well, so it all depends on what piece. You're right. So who originally made it? That was Anakin.
That sword was not only used in the killing of Mace Windu.
That doesn't count
That
because none of those
sword-
things happen.
That sword was also used to kill all of the child Jedi.
No, none of that happened because those were in those movies. Movies
I don't
to
know
not
if you
be
can.
named.
I don't know. If, so what? So now, if Kylo is not worthy to wield that sword, but Rey is. I wonder about that.
I see where you're
So-
putting that. Yeah.
So, and well, let's ask another question. Who is Darth Vader's father?
Well, that one is up for speculation, and it
So-
says the Force, which is meh.
What if we're not talking about, Rey, my niece, or Rey, my daughter? What if we're talking about, through some kind of space magic, what if we're talking about Auntie Rey?
Are we saying that Vader basically got, or conceived and sent back, or that, what are you
Just
trying to
food
say?
for thought. Just some food for thought.
All right, I will let that one linger out there, Hando. I will tell you that applies a lot of things that we have not seen possible in this universe yet, and so who knows? I will continue to believe the obvious sides of it because I don't think they're trying to blow anyone's mind with the series.
Of course, I mean,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It just makes sense in too many ways for her to be Luke's daughter. It just makes too much sense, right? Because there's timing issues, right? It goes into the... and
Well-
I mentioned the stuff about it's definitely not Han and Leia's because Han, when he first meets Rey, has no recollection who it is.
Yeah.
There's multiple times where he's just like, all right, who are you? Leia, the same thing. Like, who are you? Doesn't get it. People tried to make that argument because of at the very end scene after Han has passed, they come back to the main planet, and everyone else is kind of celebrating that they beat them and destroyed Starkiller Base. That Leia specifically comes up to Rey, and they see each other, and they hug, and they share an emotional connection there. And people try to say that that's the reason, right? Oh, but she knows, right? There's a connection. It's like, no. That's because Han died. She felt it through her affinity for the Force and her connection to Han. Instantly knew he died. You see her feel it. Rey was the only other person that had that level of connection with Han other than maybe Chewie. But Chewie, when he got off, was worried about Finn and going off with that because Finn and him had kind of got their little relationship going together by the fighting when Chewie was hurt. So this is Chewie following Finn now that he's hurt. And so when they come out, they're the two that are the only ones who know Han died, right? That are otherwise paying attention to anything. So they go and they share that emotional thing. And part of that also being that, why, people are like, well, then why did Rey have such an affinity to Han? Why did they meet up and why was it such an instant connection? Well, Rey was growing up in a time frame without a father. And when she is getting like interrogated basically, by Kylo, he basically says like, oh, he's the father you never had or kind of thing. Or basically you tied to him as though he's a father figure. So she has this big connection with him, right? And equally feels the pain when he dies. And so it's more of like they both shared this really close connection to Han Solo. And so they're just sharing that. So that's my debunking of the whole, it's their daughter or Kylo's sister or something like that. I just say no, not happening, right?
Oh, and what my favorite theory about this relationship is that I really, really hope this happens, is that we see Mara Jade come in on the scene, and that's the wife, and they, her and
you
Luke
assume
have
that.
Rey. Yeah,
you assume
that's
that, right?
got to happen, man. That's got to happen.
That's one of those other big questions is, if Luke is the father, who is the mother?
Mara Jade!
I say this because you can't go by anything original because it doesn't exist. As far as we know, that character does not exist in this world.
She'll be named Lara Wade, and she'll be a Mandalorian. I'm just pulling stuff out of my head, but it'll be Mara Jade in some way, shape, or form.
Gotcha. Well, and that's it. We just know that there has to be a mother or something that conceives this, because as my cousin jokingly said, unless Luke had an immaculate conception and somehow shot out Rey from
It might be a true only Force conception, where he was sitting meditating one day and then he through osmosis.
So, but
split into two like an amoeba.
As we talk about those future plot points, I think that's going to be a huge part that we'll get into is Rey's origin. So other thing, I want to talk more about the character stuff and we'll get more of the plot. So Finn, we talked a little bit. Finn, what do you guys think about Finn as a character?
How about we do this after the short break?
Do we need to take a break? I don't want to take a break. We need to take a break. I have to set up something for the break. I was totally just going to talk through it.
Well, while we do this, let me have a quick moan, a quick gripe. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson, as expected, went onto Twitter as soon as he saw the film and went, blah, the science is all wrong.
You can't blow up planets like that.
Okay,
to which I want to say, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I respect you very much for your field and for your ways in the fields of science. However, this is a field of fiction which you have no sway.
This is fantasy, sir. It's
yes.
fantasy.
That being said, I do have a couple of gripes myself. One, the fact that the general, not the princess, the general, did know somehow that her hubby died was a little bit weird without it being the Force. Because...
Well, no, it was the Force, because she's Force attuned.
Sure. That's what we draw our conclusions to, basically.
Well, they say that in all of them. Because in the original trilogy, and this, using that as canon, the original trilogy...
at the end of Jedi.
Luke basically says, the Force is strong with my entire family, including my sister.
We know that, yes.
That's you, Leia. So she is Force attuned, and she has strength in the Force. We know that.
Yes, but we've never seen her really use the Force other than that.
She's not trained in it, right? At least in this series, she's not trained in the Force. There's discussion that, if you go to the Legends, that she was and had all kinds of power. But from the perspective of this, no. She just is aware of it, and it has some strength to it. That much we
Secondly, Death Star 3.0, as I like to call it.
Okay, yep.
So when you look at this, when they look into space and they see it destroy those 4 or 5 planets, right?
Yep, 5 beams, 5 planets.
First of all, assuming that it can shoot a beam of light, that the Death Star 3.0 can shoot a beam of light that fast to destroy those planets.
They say it's a hyperspace weapon.
It's going faster than the speed of light already.
Yep, they say it's a hyperspace weapon. Yep.
Okay. Secondly, they can see this from the planet they're on.
Yep.
How could you see
that
this?
was bad. Yeah.
Well, no. So this is something.
Sense.
Well, no.
Unless they were destroying
beam,
5 planets within a system.
They did. Well, so they blew up the 5 planets all in one system. But the key there is, and we don't know the spatial relationship between all the planets that were being affected, so we don't know where in line they were, right? But essentially, this beam was so great and powerful, it shot across hyperspace to a whole nother system, wherever it was, to target 5 planets at once, and hit them all in that system. And theoretically, you could say, depending on where they're located, because they weren't so far off track that they couldn't be anywhere to see it, per se, because they weren't traveling for many, many days in each of these trips. And so they could have been somewhere close enough that you look up in the sky and you see this massive trace of energy that is a solid beam of energy being seen. Okay, continue.
My point is that it takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds for light to travel from our sun, Sol, to this planet Terra, right? 8 minutes, 20 seconds for light to move that far. Assuming this was vaguely similar, they wouldn't know until the timer was down and they were getting shot at almost.
Well,
I know this is fantasy.
No, but part of the thing they don't show, you don't see how long it... But you don't... No, it's not a plot hole. It's a hyperspace weapon that goes faster than the speed of light. The other thing you don't know is exactly how long it takes from when they shoot the beam to when it impacts the targets. You don't know what
No, that's not my point. My point is, they could see it on the planet. The general, the princess, could look up and see those planets being destroyed. That means they were destroyed almost 10 minutes before.
No. They didn't see the planets destroyed. They just saw the beam of light go across. They don't actually show anybody watching the planets get destroyed.
They
don't show that. No, we see it as an audience. We see the planets get impacted. From the ground, they specifically show this tiny beam up in the sky just kind of go across, and people are like, what's going on? What's that? But the only people who see the beam impact are the ones taking it face first. The ones out on the balcony watching themselves get nuked are the only ones who actually see it.
If that's the case, then that's fair enough. That Tipex is over my problem.
Yeah, I will honestly say, my goal in life now is to patch all the plots what people think are holes, because I've seen connections between all of them where it all works. It actually works, and that they didn't have plot holes. Now, there's some things that we maybe are led to wait to believe or find out more about, but not actual holes where it doesn't work. I've yet to see something I have been able to explain away as an actual plot hole. That's just me, and maybe I'm being optimistic, but so far. So we go in there, and like Kopi says, she thinks it's just empathy. I don't think it's the Force that lets them know, like Rey and Leia know that they're sharing it. They both just know Han died, and yes, it's empathy. Leia just knows because of the Force. Rey was there and watched it. And so that's why I say them just coming together. I don't think they're coming together because of Force. I think they're coming together because of the empathy. I agree with you that. All right. So that was the part about the Starkiller base and all that, right? And one of the supposed physics issues that people had with it. Like you said, it's a fantasy movie. We don't have hyperspace. We don't have the ability to fly through space with all these ability to fly like a plane, stuff like that. So there's some level of fantasy built into it. Agreed. We also don't have space magic and light swords.
Wow.
And stuff like that we know of yet.
We've not explored far enough to know if we have space magic or not.
I know. It's funny because the IRC is getting into the whole fight about Kylo, which we'll get to. We're not there yet. I do want to talk about Finn, though, as a character. And so the whole point being, he is a stormtrooper, and the stormtroopers today were brought up as no longer being clones. They mentioned specifically in the movie that they're not clones, but instead are stolen from families or acquired from families when they're young and trained up in this fully militaristic kind of boot camp for life to be loyal soldiers the whole time. Finn has had some interaction. There's stuff that's also talked about backstory in the book that doesn't need to be brought in specifically, but it gives more depth to why it's meaningful when, he changes his mind at the point where he first gets the conflict and they're told to kill all the civilians and he just doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to kill for them, for the First Order. And he sees the First Order as being evil. We don't know everything he said or seen, but he has stated multiple times in the show that, or in the movie, that he knows them like nobody else does, and they're evil, and he doesn't want to go back. So he sets the stage that the First Order is really evil in many ways. Myself, I just want to throw it out there that I thought Finn, one, acted beautifully, and fills a role of being the good conscience. Because when you were talking about, and I think it was Kuro, you mentioned that Rey is basically like Han Solo Part 2. That I think one of the things they specifically did is they took the original roles that people really liked in Star Wars, and they redistributed and mixed it up a little bit between the new protagonists. And so, yes, Rey is kind of your Han Solo character in that she's a pilot, got a bunch of stuff like that, kind of reckless running around. But she's also, this time, the Force user. So it's kind of like if Han had Force powers. Where
they
Finn,
mixed everything up.
Well, and
pretty
that's
well.
Where Finn, on the other side, is more like your Luke Skywalker, the character that's got this idealistic view of the world, who's genuinely nice and actually driven by doing the right thing to a fault. As much as he wants to run away, escape, and get out of the situation, he continues to come back because it's the right thing to do. When he first meets Rey, he's suffering from dehydration, he's drinking from the slop pit that whatever that creature is also drinking from. Says as bad as but then he hears the conflict, looks over, see a woman getting accosted, and his instant reaction is to jump and run towards the conflict. Right? I am going to save her.
Hold the thought there. Let's go to this break before we just ignore it.
All right, then fine. Let me throw in some music here or something so we can.
I thought you already did that. That's why I did the
I
segue,
kept talking.
which lasted 8 minutes.
I kept talking because I was like, but this.
I gave you an 8-minute segue.
Shush. All right. So we will take a quick break and we will get back to you to talk more Star Wars. Because hey, stupid thing. That's not what you're supposed to do yet.
Don't call copy a stupid thing.
She's not
Mr.
a
Q.
thing.
Copy Mr. Q, damn it.
Ha! Anyhow, we're taking a break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Show X, and we'll be right back.
Send in your emails to showx@vtwproductions.com. listening to Show X on btwproductions.com.
Alright guys, we are back and we're talking nothing but Star Wars today as we're going to spoil the heck out of it, talk conspiracy theories, talk characters, plotline, all of those good things coming in. To mix it up, since I couldn't find any pod-safe Star Wars music for the break, I did a little bit of OC remix of Mario's Galaxy, a song that was at least spacey themed, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Anyhow, as we get back to, we were talking a little bit about some Finn, I believe is where we were leaving off there before we had to take a quick break there. And as I was telling people, I'm happy to go as long as we need to get through all of Star Wars today, since there's nothing following us. So Finn, like I said, is kind of that mixed role where he's now the Luke Skywalker type of good old boy thing. He ran after Rey as soon as he saw the combat, but also was at least to a moment smart enough to figure out that she didn't need any help, as she went and defended herself, kind of laying in more that she's got skills, she can take care of herself. But he was just like, huh. And then at the same time, then when he gets identified, she comes running after him. He's like, "Oh crud!" Takes off, right? Fun ensues where the whole little once danger changes, they find out he's being targeted. That he just again, good Boy Scout guy grabs her hand and starts running. That she takes offense to. Well, yeah, you don't grab my hand. Let my hand go. And he just doesn't even think about it. Says, "We gotta go," and runs again, right? So he to me is the Boy Scout, right? No matter what's going on through the movie, he's the Boy Scout. He's just super good. I do have one challenge with him, and it's only because I think he believes in the greater good of it. Because then when he has this scene and they go back, before that when he's rescuing Poe, and as he's going into the Poe part, right, he says, and it's great moments, because the other thing there is, and we'll transition to Poe right after Finn, is that they are able to do a bromance between two characters in that movie faster than like anything in the past of ever. The joke between the prequels, which was that they made Finn and Poe seem more like they actually understood each other and had meaning to each other than they were in 5 minutes of airtime together than they were able to do in 3 whole movies with Ben Kenobi and Anakin. Where they actually made them feel like, boom, there was a connection, right? And
there's a whole sect on Tumblr again, absolutely hoping to help the pro-LGBT cause that they're gay. And
please.
The thing is, if they're gay, it means nothing more than if they were a straight couple, which is nothing. I don't care. I don't want romance.
We're not even dealing with
Star Wars. It's not a romance film.
Well, so something
I don't care.
Yeah, something that came up with that too was the discussion that there were multiple opportunities where Finn supposedly could have kissed Rey or something, but again, but they didn't essentially the whole time. And the whole point was that he's a Boy Scout. He's a Boy Scout. He's too good. He's too nice. To the point when he first is and they're on the ship and she's trying to fix the Millennium Falcon, and he's talking down to her, is like, what? And they talk about her wanting to go back to Jakku, and him going like, why you want to go back to Jakku? What do you need to go find? Do you got a boyfriend, a cute boyfriend? So essentially it's saying that he does find her attractive, but at the same time he's never pursuing her in a romantic way, right? It's more just they're together and going through all the things they need to do. And he never looks at her in that otherwise off way, other than, yeah, he's attracted to her, but it's strictly at that. Never goes any further. At least that's my take on it, right? And that what you see between him and Poe is more just a straight up mutual respect of two guys that are actively trying to do the same kind of mission and working together to do it. Because the only part that I had with Finn where it kind of was a challenge was when he was first escaping with Poe, right? He hadn't killed anyone yet. But once he's deciding that we need to get out of here and they're in the TIE Fighter, he jumps on that turret. He has no problem blasting the crap out of all the other stormtroopers in the bay. Where it's and I can only argue that away as being for the greater good, where he's kind of we need to get out of here, that's the right thing to do. Otherwise, it kind of goes against the he didn't want to kill civilians, but maybe he sees the First Order is so evil, it's okay if he kills the other stormtroopers. That's only a challenge because they were his comrades, right? Prior to that.
Let's talk a little bit about how crazy the internet has been going recently over the popular meme of the one famous stormtrooper. I don't know his name. The one who shouts "Traitor!" while he's holding the lightsaber.
The melee weapon.
So the one with the spinny gun thing.
His name is Nines. His name is Nines in the backstory from the prequel book. Or the transition book. His name's Nines because his thing was 21999 or something was his code name, and he was part of the riot troops, which is why he has the shock lance on him. That was a suppression tool, to not kill but to disable. And they were in the same unit going up together according to the book. That him, Slips, who's the one who dies and puts the blood on Finn's face, Finn and one other character were all part of the same squad of elite troops. And so that's why it's even more meaningful that he looks at Finn, recognizes him right away, and says, "Traitor!" And it catches Finn because they were in the same group.
Source in the IRC, according to knowyourmeme.com, they're calling him TR8R, as in traitor.
Oh, that's funny.
As his official Stormtrooper name. I don't know if that is actually his.
No, it's not, because it was FN210, was it?
I thought that was Finn's actual one.
That was Finn's. Oh, no, saying that the guy who says traitor, that was his number?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah,
Yes, it's I said, his name is Nines based on his number and his actual designator. That's the thing. That's part of the backstory. But yeah, it's funny that they say that.
So, speaking of the backstory, I actually read a synopsis of the original backstory, not the original backstory itself. So excuse my knowledge here if it is incorrect. But apparently, the reason that the guy was so adamant and ready to take on Finn and seemed to know instantly who he was as this traitor was because he used to be in the same unit as Finn.
Yes.
Him and Finn were together for almost their entire life.
Yep.
And this guy was known for being a very much pro...
First Order. He was following the First Order 100%, and he also had some issues with Finn, even when they went up.
Apparently he always called Finn the outsider, and the reason that Finn didn't have a name other than his designated number was because this guy said, "You will always be an outsider, you don't deserve a nickname." But the rest of the troop all had their own nicknames.
Which is also speaks to why the bromance between Poe and Finn happens so quickly when Poe says, "What's your name?" and he gives him the number. He's like, no, I get, how about FN? How about Finn? Let's call you Finn, because basically Finn always wanted a nickname.
Yeah.
And so that's
they
another
really
reason
clicked reason.
Yeah, they clicked real quick.
But that's also why these guys hate each other so much. So when he saw this guy jump up and call him traitor, he said, "Brilliant! I can get him back for all these years of torment of making me an outsider. This guy is my representation of the evil that is these guys."
It's his direct connection with the First Order, right?
Exactly. So it's pretty nice. And also, do you remember earlier on in the film when he first sort of becomes a traitor? It's when the fellow stormtrooper touches his helmet and leaves that trail of blood.
Yep.
Apparently, that was his only friend in the Order.
Yeah, that was Slips, who basically he had gotten together with, and that's why that kind of solidified his need to say, "I'm done. I'm not doing this." Was when Slips died, and so that gives you more of the understanding of why it was such a big deal for Finn to get out of it. Which leads to him. But again, and throughout the movie, I just think Finn continues to keep that solid character of being the good guy. You see, even when he's at Maz's and he wants to leave, and he has the opportunity to go to the Outer Rim and to get away from it all, because he does the right thing by telling her he's not, part of the First or part of the Resistance, and stuff like that. And he's on his way. He's ready to go.
I was expecting so much more fallout from that. I was expecting there to be a huge scene, and I was waiting for that horrible trope. But it didn't happen. It was the
reason it didn't happen is because he didn't let it fester. He took Han Solo's advice, and the great play back and forth, because Han Solo had so many good lines in it, where he's like, hey, I'm kind of a big deal with the Resistance, so, and he's like, all right, big deal. Well, just so you know, you've got a bigger problem than, being found out here at Maz's. Women always find out. Always. And saying, like, I saw through you in a heartbeat, you're not part of the Resistance, whatever. But instead of calling him out, like, just saying, here's your real issue. And the nice thing is that basically that happened as they were at Maz's, right? And so before he left Maz's, he finally admitted to her. So he didn't let it linger so long to make it a festering wound and so bad. It actually showed that he did the right thing and admitted to it, even though that was probably the thing he was most scared about at that time, was revealing that he had been lying. And so, in a way, I think they did the right thing there by letting him get away without it being a huge disaster. I mean, she looked at him like, what? But then they had already set that bond enough that she was still like, but you can't go. Even though she was kind of like hurt by it and he left anyways. And so there was that. But at the same time, he never got anywhere because as soon as the First Order came in, again, his righteous need to save the world kicked in. And instead of jumping on that ship and getting out of there, he ran right back into the fray to try to help things out. Because that's who Finn is, right? He's the good old boy. He is the Boy Scout. And I will say, I think the way he was acted was amazing. Because he was so, just adamant and active in how he was doing everything, where every time he's on screen, you really feel the kind of the emotion that this character's having. Even to the scene and the banter between him and everyone. Finn seemed to be, to me, a central character between, because everyone who had an interaction with him had such great moments. You know, you had the little things with him and Poe, with him and Rey, with Finn and with Han Solo, multiple times, even to the point where they're in there, he's like, we gotta find her, he's trying to make the plan, and Han starts like doing the like, hey, look over there, and Finn's like, Taki's like, what's this you're doing? What's this? You know, I'm trying to make a plan here, and he's like, look over there. Kind of
That's quite funny, that was good.
That just shows his level of acting was phenomenal, because it just clicked with every scene, right? You know, even the little things like with BB-8. It seems like, to me, Finn was just so integral in everyone's interactions that anytime he was doing something with somebody, you felt the connection. So that's what I loved about that character. So with that,
I got a question. It's kind of suggested, but is Finn Force sensitive?
at no
do you
point do
guys
they
think?
show him doing anything with the Force. At no point.
Yeah.
I think he was pretty clearly led by the Force, if nothing else. The fact that... Okay, so just in a general understanding of what Star Wars is, it's the understanding of balance, right?
Yes, and the Force
And
is
the Force
permeated
clearly
throughout
felt
everything.
that... They clearly felt in the sense... Well, to me, it felt that in the sense of space Jedi, of space magicians, it wasn't fair. And so they gave this new girl, Rey, massive amounts of power. But in the sense of the armies, they felt it wasn't fair either. The rebels weren't powerful enough, so they led him away to become this new powerful force. Not the actual force, but is in its own right a force.
So, what I would argue on the lines of what you're talking about, Ken, is that I would say the Force, as an entity, good and evil, throughout permeating everything in the universe, did lead Finn to find the outpost after crashing in the desert, right? And ensured he was kind of in the right place at the right time. In the same sense as Han Solo, having been led to being part of the group and doing the things he did in the originals. I don't think he is Force sensitive in the meaning that he feels the Force, can act on the Force, or is being drawn to something in the sense that he is very aware of it. I think it's more like just the cosmic forces that allow things to happen of the Force brought him there. But in the sense that we usually say Force attuned or Force sensitive, I don't think he is. I do think he's being led by the Force, but I don't think he himself is Force sensitive. If that makes sense.
I agree. Yeah.
And so that would be my take on it. So, all right. So I want to transition from Finn over to Poe. And there's not a lot we have to necessarily talk about Poe, other than he is also kind of the iteration where he's the new Wedge Antilles. He's the ace pilot, you know? He goes beyond the Han Solo character in that this is like the representation of that is what a badass pilot looks like, right? And they call it out multiple times. He's the, they say in the scroll, right? He is the best pilot in the rebellion, or in the resistance, right? And then they have the epic scene again on Maz's planet where you finally get to see him just cutting loose.
Oh, that was so great. He was the way he's actually vectoring the X-Wing. Oh, man, that was awesome.
It just catches and flows between every ship that he's hitting, gets every one of them, and he just ties them all together and just wastes them, right? And at the time, it's funny because Finn doesn't know that Poe's alive officially, but when he finishes just killing them all, Finn on the ground's like, holy crap, that's an amazing pilot, kind of deal.
It was kind of obvious, though. As soon as he said that, I had my own sort of suspicions of, they're focusing on these planes a lot. That's interesting. And then, then suddenly he said that. I was like, Poe's back then.
Yeah,
it was a bit obvious.
They show it when he's first coming in, and he's like, let's go after these guys, because you see him in the helmet and stuff, but right away you know it's him. Right, and it's just so that was great just to show a scene of true skill. That was really cool. Other than that, he's basically just that plot point character where he is the ace pilot, and so they're able to give that role to him and not focus on the others, where they could do more things on the ground and stuff like that, and there's your space piece, right? That's the part they really link to it. And it also allows to, in the ending sequence when he flies in, and they're trying to take out the Starkiller base, his skill in going in there and doing what it is, because he is such a good pilot. Right, so that's really what they're setting the stage for with him, because that's about all the main interaction you get, other than he gets to give Finn the cool coat. And show that instant bromance and the interaction to get him into the resistance. What's that?
Did you? I heard something about they're using the coat as a device. Like, this is what the hero wears. So first it's Poe, and then it goes to Finn, and then doesn't Rey end up with it at the end? Isn't she fighting?
No,
she's not wearing it at the end. Okay.
No, Finn keeps it the whole time. Afterwards,
Finn
because
has
once Poe does the official, gives it to hey, that's my coat, and says, no, it suits you, looks good on you, right? Keep it. That's the passing of that torch, where it's now his for the rest of the show. So that's his. Because the other coat they show is Han's coat, and they talk about because Leia says new coat. He's like, no, same coat. That kind of thing, or whatever.
No, that's the opposite. She says you got the same coat.
He says new coat. That's right.
No,
Sorry.
it's new. Yeah.
So that piece of it. Otherwise, no. So, are there any other thoughts about what needs to be said about Poe himself? Okay.
It was rather self-explanatory, and there wasn't much airtime, to be honest. So
yeah, exactly. I think he was just that component to put it all together. He's still a solid character, has his backstory, but it didn't need a whole lot for what his role in the movie was. Right? He is there. He saved them from being held up. Those kind of things. Anyhow. All right. Do we want to go? We talked a little bit about Han. I think he's kind of self-explanatory for the most part. We've already kind of mentioned him. You want to talk about Chewie a little bit, Hando, right?
I like the way they put a lot more humor in the relationship between Han and Chewie, but I was really disappointed when Han got killed. Chewie did not go Wookiee enough on those stormtroopers. Like, he let out a big, like, roar, and then he started shooting them up, and then he ran around, he started, like, detonating
He basically just started killing everyone.
He should have been beating stormtroopers with other stormtroopers. He should have went Hulk, and that should have been 5 minutes of Chewie just, like, bashing stormtrooper heads together.
If they had done that, it would have been fan service to the end.
I was a little like,
only thing I would have liked to have seen, maybe, to tie into what you're saying, but I think it would have made the movie more violent than they were trying to, is I would have loved to have seen Wookiee pull a stormtrooper's arms out of the sockets, right?
That's exactly what should have happened. That's the least that should have happened.
The one thing that maybe, if that first thing we shot it, and he shoots Kylo and then turns to the stormtrooper right there, and have him like beat and just grab the arms and rip and then start shooting people, that'd have been great, right? But beyond that, it was an instant rage, but it also shows that Chewie is not a mindless beast either. You know, he still had the self-preservation, had to get out there, finish the mission, all of that, because he is actually a really solid trooper and character. Because they also go more into Chewie with showing his humor and some of his soft side. And as I was talking to our friend Sir Spencer, his favorite scene in the entire movie is when Chewie's in the infirmary at the base, and the nurse gal or whoever, the doctor, is talking to him, and basically he's going to like, oh yeah, and she was like, you know, he's like, oh, that does sound scary. You must be really brave, right? And as he's like trying to tend to him.
So when that happened, just a little side story here. When that happened, Kitten leaned over to me and went, "That is totally you. Whenever you get hurt, you come home and you're like, oh, Kitten, look at my sore bit. Tell me I'm brave. Tell me I'm so brave."
Well, and from that though, doesn't that feel like that's kind of what they were doing? That it just, you know, they were giving him a certain level of personality that was just that you didn't get before, which
it was nice. I liked it, yeah.
I appreciated it, right? Which also reminded me, one of the throwback things also was when Finn sits down at the table in the Millennium Falcon, the game comes on from the chess match, and in doing so, it's the exact scene that was left from the first time we saw it. That was really cool. This reminded me of that real quick. So I like that in Chewie because they also, again, they did the whole Chewbacca, Han Solo relationship, like when they first got picked up and they got the Millennium Falcon and they come on and then you see, you know, we're home, they introduce the characters, like, awesome. They start dealing with Finn and Rey, but when the other people that basically Han's pissed off come on, the little banter between Han and Chewie, right, where Han does his own little revisionist history, where he's like, I'll do what I always do, I'll talk my way out of it, and Chewie kind of looks at him like, what? It's like, what? I always do. It's like, Chewie's like, no, you don't. Basically, calling Han out was great.
Those space pirates were awesome because they felt like, hey, this is something we haven't seen before, but it's still Star Wars, but it's space pirates. And
it's other aspects about that smuggling life, right, that Han Solo had.
It's so
and
good.
him reverting to it. Well, and it was great, too. That was another one of the cameo things. So real quick before you get into one of the cameo things they did is the group that was the Asian background group, essentially. I forget the name they was talking about. They start with a G or something, their group. But when they came on, the three main actors in that were also 3 actors from it was a martial arts flick or something. But basically, JJ loved their work as a role, and so he hired all 3 of them to do that piece that they had done as basically a similar kind of role in another movie. So they're another one of the sets of cameos that you might not have seen or noted. Anyhow, Kuro, you were saying.
Chewie's blaster was freaking awesome. I just love when Han's like, let me see that thing. That's amazing.
So that was great because not only did it kind of show something that we never got to see before, which is why does a Wookiee carry a blaster like that? Why does he carry a bowcaster instead of the regular old-fashioned blaster? And then you get to see it. He's a big, strong character, and this blaster is like a, big, M50 style blaster. It's a big gun, 50 cal type version of a blaster. And so you see it hit and explode and the damage it does. And they do that on purpose, and it'll lead into what we talk about with Kylo Ren. Because they're showing the power of the blaster. And what they do with the great banter between Han Solo and Chewie is showing that in all the time they've been together, Han has never really taken into account like the power of this bowcaster. Finally sits down and says, wait, let me try that. And goes back and he's like, oh, I like this.
It's like damn.
Yeah, like this gun is nice, right? It's just so cool. So cool to see that. So yeah, I love how they did, because again, the swan song of Han, but at the same time really adding to kind of the character of Chewie. Because we get him in the background from a lot of things. This one gives him more personality, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
What else do I want to say about that piece? That's the main things probably with Chewbacca. I do like that the original cast all came back for it, including the original Chewie, although they also passed it off to a new actor to kind of do all the movement sequences, because he was still pretty fast. And
they balanced all the characters incredibly well throughout the whole film. Like, everybody had like their spot in the movie, and it was balanced throughout the whole film. It was beautifully balanced.
That's the thing. The whole movie is so well made, I think, as a whole, that they didn't really slip on any of those parts. There may be some discussion, again, from the plot points, because a lot of people had other thoughts or discussions about some of it, but for the most part, I thought it really worked. All right, another character I want to talk to before we get to is the Stormtroopers as a whole. And
they were no longer the generic, the same thing cloned over and over. They seemed to have a bit more personality, both as a troop, as a fire team, as well as in general for the whole army. They seemed to be more sort of human, I suppose. They were more devoted as well. They were like zealous almost about their own movement. They were there to serve. Whereas previously they were just like robots.
I think they did the opposite. I think that they emphasized, okay, these are no longer clones, but these are brainwashed meat machines that don't even have a name. They just have a designation, and they just mindlessly follow the orders of this great and powerful leader.
Now, I would disagree with you. I would say, Hondo, that more like what Ken's saying as being individuals, but part of a fanatic militaristic regime, like as everyone likens it to the Nazis, basically, right? That they were still individuals, but they were following an ideal and were brought up to believe it from the ground up. Because one of the things I liked about it was a big change from original Stormtroopers. The First Order could hit people. Stormtroopers could shoot. They could actually fight. They could fight, they could shoot, they could make their own decisions. They weren't just the same thing you shot and killed every time, right? And so
they weren't these genetically deformed beings which couldn't aim anymore because they were so deformed.
Well, that's the thing, right? Instead of being programmed, they were trained from birth, essentially, or from young kids, up to be in this military. And so while I agree they're brainwashed, I think they actually show them as being way more skillful than clones ever were. But there's the risk now of having one turn on you because they have more free thought, right? And so that shows. But that's why I say I actually love what they did with them, because from the get-go, they can actually hit things. And they got rid of that old trope, that old meme that Stormtroopers can never hit anything. You know, the classic meme online where you see the target pistol alarm clock where you have to pick up the gun and shoot the target to snooze or turn off the alarm.
Yeah, and then they can't ever do it. Yeah.
And the shot of the Stormtrooper like, I haven't slept in days. And so because of that, it's one of those where they fixed that. They made them like, oh, these are all soldiers. And it makes sense. Like, oh my god, you know, the stuff that came out before the movie. A black Stormtrooper, blah, but they're clones, blah. You know, and this just said, no, this is a new paradigm. The clone thing didn't really work. We're trying this new way by making fanatical troops that are all actual individuals. And I really like that they did that.
following the line of thought, yes, I'm happy they did it, but I'm sad that they didn't do it well enough. Because to be honest, if you trained a child from birth to be quoting effectively Hitler, right, over and over and over, and being truly fanatical, I'd say they were, but they weren't enough. I think they could have been even more fanatical.
Well, but that's
they would
the
have
thing.
been even more crazed, to the point where they're nearly non-functional without them. I mean, he should have been struggling to be able to speak to somebody else without hailing the Sith beforehand, you know?
Yeah, careful with that, because they're not the Sith. They're from the dark side. That's part of the plot point. No, it's not. And that's something they very specifically call out in this movie. So, before we get to that, because if we start to transition the plot, two other probably characters need to be noted. One is Snoke's, specifically because Snoke's is, the new evil something in the world. We don't know exactly what.
He, by the way, I read something online. Apparently, just an FYI, he's not actually the size he is in the films. That's just a projection of him.
It is a projection.
The actual him
that.
is just a normal size.
Well, we don't know yet, right? We don't know for sure, but it does look like that is a projection. One of the concepts, is he that big? Is he small? Who knows, right? We won't know until we see the actual character. He's probably normal size, because we have yet to see an alien that is significantly a giant or something like that. The projection is probably just to look down on his, his subordinates and that, but we'll see. But the idea is, one of the questions is, where did he come from? He obviously has some awareness of the Force and a feeling of it, because he is this grand, supreme leader. And at the end, after
he taught Kylo Ren, so he must be good enough to be able to.
He at least
so he must have
seduced
more than
him,
just
right? We don't know his background fully. We know he seduced him because in the movie, from what it says, Leia says specifically that he was seduced by Snoke, and that's when they lost him. That Snoke basically did all these other things and started the First Order and is doing the Supreme Leader. But that's all we know so far, right? We don't know really anything else about that character other than he's Force attuned and is the leader of this group and is going to train Kylo. And so I imagine there's going to be a lot of future knowledge and backstory. There has to be. Otherwise, what's this character, right? Awfully convenient, although arguably in 30 years you could have a new darkness rise that we didn't know about in the original movies. Because that was one of those kind of plot points people are trying to bring up to say, oh, well, if he was a dark Jedi or something, we should have heard about him in the previous. It's like, not necessarily. It's been 30 years. He could have been a subordinate in the Empire, and when we lost the head of the snake with the Emperor and with Vader going, he could have made his way up through the ranks very quickly after that in the vacuum, using the Force, going truly dark, and taking over and creating his new vision, the First Order. So we'll see. We don't know yet, as far as I can tell, but we'll see. And so is there any other discussion you guys have about him as a character, other than me saying there's got to be more? We just don't know yet. All right. So if not, then the next one
that pretty much sums it up.
Okay. The one that we have to talk... Well, there's a couple other characters that are great, like Maz. Maz is a great character. She ties to the history. She's essentially the make-all for Yoda. She is the Yoda character without herself being Force attuned. She's just been around for so long that she's seen so much that she knows how it works. Because she also, pivotally, is the first one to actually tell Rey about the Force in any way. Rey has heard about the Force, and the legends exist, and Han Solo says prior, yes, all the stuff you heard is true. There is a good, there is a bad, there are Jedi, it all is true. But Maz stops and actually, after she touches the lightsaber, tells her, like, this is the Force, and there is good, and there is bad, and this and that. And no,
this
Maz...
is legit, yo.
And Maz did not die missing. As far as we've seen, nothing shows Maz dying.
The main reason I'm going to watch the movie again is for that dream sequence that Rey has when she touches the lightsaber, because I didn't get all that.
I know, I missed out on some of that. I think we saw Kylo Ren.
So I can talk to you about that, and we'll do that right after we talk about
Jedi.
Kylo. We'll talk about it right after we talk Kylo. Because I took notes specifically about that sequence.
Oh, good.
Yes, because it's my third time, and even the second time I saw more, but didn't catch everything. So, Maz is a great character because she's that tie into the history and kind of a way to show the things around. Maz had gotten out with them missing. She left the same time Chewie, Han, and them got out because she was with them. When she comes out with them and then she runs off one direction, you don't see where she goes after that. So that's why Maz, we don't know if has died or not, but from the movie she didn't just die. She came out of the ground with Han and with Chewie. So beyond that though, she just is that person who's able to look into people, the whole I see their eyes, I've seen things over the years, I know this. She's also the kind of, for the plot point, she's the Cantina / Yoda. right? Because it's a scene with all these other aliens in there. You get to see a look into a bigger universe with that. And she's been around at that specific spot, that watering hole, for 1,000 years. And so, as they do prequel stuff, and hopefully when they do the Han Solo Chronicles, we may be able to see that character again to help talk to why he knows her.
As soon as they said that she'd lived there for 1,000 years, I was like, oh, well, it's getting destroyed.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
Well, yeah, no, that was
Hey, look,
happening,
that
right?
planet's wearing a red shirt.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said, and like part of me can't wait until the Blu-ray's available so I can freeze frames, because they did so much with the set design that was meaningful. When they show her plaza and they're walking into it, and all those flags are in there, those flags are meaningful, right? They all are from different, like, sects or something, right? Different groups. And I would love to have time to study, like, what all those symbols were that were
Such
on
an
front of
awesome set. Like,
And
that was
just-
one of the best sets in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was
definitely.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And they use that scene so well, because even when they're first flying in, and, you know, little things, right? You know Rey's been on the planet for a long time, where she was on Jakku for almost most of her life. When she flies in, they get to Maz's planet, and she looks, and you see her almost crying up. And they're like, what? And it's like, I didn't think this much green existed in the universe, right?
In the galaxy, she
In the
says.
galaxy. It's
Yeah.
like,
But it's
Yeah.
funny. Have you seen the meme from that?
no, I haven't seen that one.
It's the clip of the film where she says that. Then Snoop Dogg starts dancing.
Oh, that's entertaining. That's
I
entertaining.
believe I have seen that one.
I haven't seen that one yet. That's funny. But yeah, so it's great that they use that as a connective like they do, and that leads to, if they do things with the franchises, I hope they do with the entire IP, I would love to see Maz again as a character that's brought back to help older scenes and stuff and kind of re-push some of that storyline. Because, you know, it's just like she says, the lightsaber part, when Rey picks it up, you know, it basically says, I've had that for a long time. And, you know, Han said, where'd you get that? It's like, well, that's a good story for another time. Yeah, what's that story? I want to know, because that was left on Cloud City at the bottom with his hand. Which also leads
That makes me wonder if they don't actually have a story yet, and they're just like, just write in for another time, that'll do it.
Now, what I will say is I truly believe that because this is a Disney franchise and they have so much invested in what this being successful, I'd be surprised if this hasn't fully been written out, much like the Infinity Gauntlet storyline for Marvel. That they already know where they're going with the plot. They already have all the characters. Now they're just trying to fit in the details. Because we already know they've got at least 5 movies coming out. So they know they're building stuff. So I'd be surprised if they haven't already basically written, if not the skeleton, most of the script for all the movies.
So we're going to be seeing 4 more.
Is it 4 more we got right now?
Or is it going to be 3?
Well, so we know on the list,
thought it was
you
gonna
can
be a
find it
series of 3.
online. You can find online where the next movie coming out this fall is Rogue One, the story of how they got the Death Star plans originally before the first movie. And then the next one coming out is Episode 8, which is next May timeframe or something like that, summer next year. And then after that, we have Han Solo Chronicles, the year after that. And then the year
Hey, did
after
you guys ever
that
read
should
those
be
books?
Episode 9. Well, they don't matter. Don't matter.
Well, I know they're probably not going to follow it, but the books were awesome.
Oh,
Oh, so good.
That's the problem, right? That's the whole angst to why when we go to, they've all been regaled to the legends. All those stories were amazing, which is why it hurts. Because I loved reading the Timothy Zahn stuff. All the different writers out there that have touched the Star Wars universe, they've been amazing. So it hurts that we don't have those.
All
and
I
with-
want is Mara Jade.
A lot
Okay.
of Disney films, there's lots and lots of additional films. Lots of...
They're doing substance around the whole universe. They realize this is a
they're
big
all
universe.
good, though.
Yeah. Well, that's
Like,
why I
and-
always reference Marvel, because all of that stuff has been good.
And J.J. Abrams, on top of that, like, he did Star Trek.
Yep.
And he did the second Star Trek film. And both of those were phenomenally
However,
good films.
J.J. Abrams is not making any of the other Star Wars as far as we know.
Really?
He's not
he's
making the
directing
next
the
one.
second one.
He's not doing the
That's
second
a
one,
shame.
and he's not doing the one after that, because I think they
And
brought
he
him
even
in.
expressed regret about it, too.
Well,
He's
I
like,
think
"Damn
they-
it, I should have done it."
They brought him in specifically to do the reboot. Well, I would say the continuation with a feel of a reboot, right? Because the elephant in the room is the plot line is the same as Episode 4, essentially.
It says on his
But
Wikipedia
it brings
page that he's the
efforts from
executive
all of them.
producer for Episode 8.
But he's not directing it.
Ah.
That's the key, right? And again, it's what Disney has done. Not all the Marvel movies have been made by the same guy. And that's why I have hope, actually, because Disney as an umbrella, is looking over the whole thing saying, we are going to make far too much money. Can I say, $1 billion+ already? On the Star Wars franchise to let it go and be bad, right? They have too much invested.
Have you seen the things going out on Facebook that said somebody misprinted that Star Wars has already made like $1.7 billion?
Yeah.
It's like, each American should have seen the film.
No. The best is
or have paid $5 million a piece to see
the best one I saw of those was to say that it's made over $1 billion, whatever it was. That means every fan who went and saw it spent $5 million to see the movie.
$5.3 million.
That was the best meme to go against the whole lottery one we had here in the U.S. that people were dumb. Yes, $1.5 billion divided by 300 million is not $4.3 million. It's $4.3. Maths are good. Yeah, that was so bad. Anyhow, so that talks about the Moss character. I really want to talk about Kylo because there is so much up, down, angst, this, that about Kylo Ren. All right, Kylo Ren. Just to set the stage, and I'll get you guys' opinions, and then I will fix it with the knowledge, is that he is a Padawan of the dark side. For the first time in a Star Wars movie, we're not seeing someone who's either fully actualized as a dark Jedi.
He is a Padawan.
He is.
He's definitely not fully trained. I'll agree
but I
with
say
you
that sets the stage for the discussion, right? Because people are giving so much angst about his character. But that's part of the discussion, right? He is a Padawan. He is learning to be the dark side. And he is someone who has been seduced and chosen and is continuing to choose to go to the dark side. Because for the first time ever, we're seeing someone who is having to fight against going back to the light side. He's feeling a draw to do his old life, to be
He is the inverse of his grandfather. He's the inverse Vader.
Yes, exactly. And so he's not struggling with, will I be, am I going to go dark? He's like, I'm dark. I want to be dark. I might go light because I have this moment, right? So here's the thing. So that sets the stage. Because Kylo Ren, his actual name being Ben Solo, for anyone who misses when Han on the bridge says, Ben! In tribute probably to Ben Kenobi, go figure. But being Ben Solo, his story is that, he's their son between Leia and Han. At some point, and this is a little bit inferred, but it's from what they say in the movie, he was already having dark intentions. Leia says that she specifically sent him to go train under Luke in order to try to avoid him going to the dark side. They already had signs they saw him going dark and said, to save him, I sent him to Luke, right? To go train. And then they have their discussion about how Snoke basically seduced him to the dark side and went that way. Because that's also talked about Leia saying that's when we lost him is when I sent him away. Because basically she couldn't be there to give the love and whatever, right? That's kind of an inference, but she says, we lost him when I sent him away, and that's also when I lost you, which is basically her saying that she lost Han. We don't know specifics, but it seems like for whatever reason she made all that decision and Han made it. They thought about it, who knows, but Han felt like he had to leave too because she sent their son away to go get trained. Alright, so that's kind of that plot point that happened. We know that somewhere in the training with Luke, he became Kylo Ren, formed the Knights of Ren, and did something that dismantled the entire effort that Luke was having of training a new sect of Jedi. We get from the flashback a scene where it looks like it's Kylo with a group behind him, and specifically there's 7 of them total. There's Kylo and 6 others in that scene. This is me doing the counting as I was like, what's going on here? In the flash. Basically it looks like attacking Luke is what it looks like. But we're seeing it from the perspective of who had the lightsaber and from essentially Rey's perspective, but it seems like they were attacking Luke. And kind of like the scene of what would likely be that moment when Kylo finally went to dispose of Luke or get rid of whatever order Luke was working on. And all we know is that whatever that effort was, it dismantled what Luke was doing, and he took off after that to go seek out what they believe to be the first Jedi Temple, essentially. From there, Kylo, we know, is now part of the First Order. Still a Padawan. He's got a huge bout of raw power in the Force. And we see that by seeing Force powers we haven't seen before in the first scene when he literally stops a blaster bolt mid-air.
That was so unexpected and cool. And I love that you saw in the faces of everybody nearby, they're all
looking
shocked.
at it like, what
What?
the... Yeah. That moment of his hit, it's just going, and you see it raw energy being contained because it's still raw and pulsating and sitting there like, I'm a blaster and I should be, flying. And just
I had to think. I was like, is this the fucking Matrix or what?
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
So from that, right away we
awesome.
know that Kylo has a mass amount of raw power, right? The other thing I'm going to say, because here's the classic, all right, and we'll start the discussion what everyone gets pissed about with Kylo. Everyone says, and they kind of equate him to the Spider-Man 3 version of Spider-Man with the black suit, basically being an emo character. And that, I think, is the
He's
most
a little bitch.
mischaracterized version of Kylo in the world. He's not a bitch. He's not. He's not.
Okay, so I thought he was so cool when he had the mask on. And as soon as he... and to be fair, that's what they're trying to portray. He wants to be the guy in the mask. What he actually is the guy beneath the mask. He doesn't want to be that guy. He wants to be the guy in the mask.
I think
But he
everybody
keeps
was
effing up.
expecting to see Darth Vader, and that's not what happened.
Well, so here's the thing. Again, Padawan. Vader was a
exactly.
Jedi, a dark Jedi, a fully realized,
He was full
Lord.
in the dark forces.
Yes. And the Emperor was fully evil, right? This was someone who's fighting with his own internal struggle. And the reason I say he's not emo and people mischaracterize the scene, right? One of the things that JJ did with this Star Wars that's never been done before is he really showed what it meant to be on the light and dark side of the Force. Because they always talk about it, lip service in the other movies where they say the light side is basically this benevolent force of good that people let help guide them and they become a part of, where the dark side is fueled by fear, anger, doubt, all those kind of emotions. Those are all the paths of the dark side. But you say that you never see anybody fearing, angry, emotional in the dark side. Vader is fully in control. He doesn't get pissed. He just sits there and kind of goes, I'm going to do
That's
this
where
now.
Vader gets his power, though.
No.
He specifically states at one point, I'm sure, that his power comes from directing his anger. Whereas
You're right.
Kylo Ren,
Right.
you see frequently doing the opposite. Like, he literally picks up his saber and just attacks his computers when he is angry.
He gives into the anger, but that's the thing. He's not being emo like I'm depressed or da-da-da. He's just mad. He's filled with rage, but he also has that self-doubt. And you get that piece specifically from when Rey pushes back against the Force push, when they're doing the mind trick, and gets the insights like, oh, you're afraid. You're afraid that you will never be as good or as powerful as Vader. And you get that insight, right, into what his motivations are. And that he really does doubt himself. And so you see, most of the time, Kylo is so in control. And then he lashes out when it goes beyond what he can control and it's out of his hands and something doesn't work in his favor. That's when he lashes out and destroys the equipment where he's mad and the rage bubbles over and he can't contain it. And then he tries to contain it again. And then the guy says, is there anything else? He's like, well, there was a girl. And he gets pissed and force pulls, right? Because he's still on that bubbling rage piece. And even the second time, because now Rey got away and he was about to come in there and try to convince her further to bring her over the dark side after talking to Ahsoka, saying she's powerful, gotta bring her in, I'll do it, watch, I got this. He had just told Supreme Leader, I got this, I'm gonna bring her in, and we got a new Padawan, right? Walks back and she's gone. It's his rage. But instead of it being a Darth Vader BS written in, no! It's just an outburst of rage. And so I love that because it shows he's young, he's untrained, he's filled with anger and doubt and all the things that are the dark side. He is the dark side. So that's my take.
Yeah.
And that's
I still
Stormtroopers
believe
just shit
the inverse
themselves
of
when they
Vader.
see him.
All right, so Kuro, real quick, Kuro, what'd you say?
Those stormtroopers just shit themselves when they see him getting
Well,
angry.
that was one of the great comedy moments in the movie, right? Because they're walking and they just see things, sparks flying, and here they're like, nope, obviously I've got somewhere else to be.
Yeah.
And they turn around and walk the other way. Don't need to go that way. Hando, you were saying.
No, and this has been discussed thoroughly on the internet, but people are saying, when Han and Kylo were on the bridge and he kills Han, some people are saying, oh no, he was lying the whole time. He was, bringing Han in closer in order that he could kill him. And I think they very obviously tell the story with light. You see Kylo's face, half in red and half in blue, and you could see him I can't make this decision. And then
you see the struggle.
Yeah, and then his face goes fully red. The sun sets, his face goes fully red, and he makes the choice to be dark right there. And he's like, all right, I'm doing this.
So that's one of those key pivotal moments in Kylo's story, is that he is struggling back and forth, and he has a moment's pause when he sees his father on the bridge. Yeah. And, I mean,
he was 50-50 right there. He was like, I don't know.
As soon as you see Han step on the bridge, you know he's dead, right? But... yeah. Beyond that, when you see him coming up, and they do a great part tying it into the whole point that the star is being sucked into the planet, to the Star Killer to power it, there's still light. And during that moment, he is standing in the light, and it's like you said, it's that 50-50 kind of thing, and you see him struggling with it for a moment, where he's kind of like, wait, I'm hearing my father, right? And I'm thinking about it for a moment, he's struggling with it, and then the sun fully dissipates. The darkness drops, and when that darkness drops, you also start to see his face kind of go like, oh, wait.
And it goes
see
fully
him make
red.
The decision, and then he takes it and he kills his father. And you see even after that, and this is why I say the acting in the movie is phenomenal, that as he's doing that, Han's face, right, is like, oh, but son, I've been betrayed, and reaches up to touch his face. But Kylo's face at that point goes, and he kind of does this little shake of like, yep, I'm committed now.
Yeah.
And he does almost have that proper, like, thank you for letting me get this way. Thank you for helping me through that struggle. And tosses him off, right? It's just like,
So I took that a slightly different way. What I saw there was, yes, all what you said, the symbolism with the light, that was fairly obvious with the sun dissipating, and then it seemed like he chose the evil decision. Remember what he said to his father? He said, "Help me."
Yes.
Help me.
Yes, he did.
So I think what they were trying to do here was link back to the previous films with Han shot first, right? I think they were linking back into that. Did Han press it, or did he? Did Han say a sort of, I will do anything for you, son, and killed himself so that he could still contain the light, so that Rilo could never become truly dark-eyed, because he could no longer kill his father because his father killed himself? Or did Kylo Ren really actually kill his father and then become Darkseid? I think it was a toss-up to say, we don't know what actually happened there. Maybe Kylo Ren believes that his father helped him to join the dark side, but what he really did is robbed him of his chance to become truly evil.
Interesting. I have never heard that thought process. That's an interesting thought. Because I saw it from the way of, Kylo saying, like, turning it on Han, and Han having the expression of, I was betrayed. But that's an interesting point, and we'll have to see what they do in the future, because that does come out. But it leads us to the discussion then with Kylo about the final fight, right? Because everybody's up in arms about Kylo being a bitch when it comes to the final fight against Rey and Finn, right? So step one, we already talked about this to a degree, and this is the transfer over, right? Which is the bowcaster bolt. As soon as he kills Han, Han goes dropping, Chewie loses his crap and shoots him in the side. And he takes it in the side, and we've seen multiple times up to this point that bowcaster is no joke.
Yeah, it blows up and
flying stormtroopers.
The stormtroopers go flying, right? Well, again, Kylo, huge power on the Force, very strong, right? And so in doing so, he takes that blaster bolt and it hits. All right, we go to the battle. As they're running away, Kylo's out there and intercepts them. They hear the lightsaber, which, by the way, the story of the lightsaber is raw. I love the lightsaber because it has that feeling of raw, uncontained power or barely contained power. Supposedly from the story, he has a slightly flawed crystal, and he kind of forcibly put it together on his own. And those side parts coming out are actually vents, because it can't actually properly project all the power of it, or it would self-destruct itself. And so those are actually vents that are coming off the side. Regardless, it's cool, it's raw, and it shows the exact opposite between Anakin's old blade, between the blue blade being solid and clean, and that raw, red, like, angry-looking beam of Kylo as they're fighting, right? So just bringing that point up, because I did love what they did with the lightsaber, and they made it work very well in the movie. But that fight that then ensues, if you watch it, right away, he takes Rey out of the equation, right? Throws her against a tree, knocks her out. And from there, Finn is kind of like, well, crap. And people start to say, well, okay, Finn is just a stormtrooper. Well, Finn is a trained soldier his whole life. And they show, and even that with the shock trooper weapon, right? It's not like they only trained on blasters. That's his expertise. But they've had melee weapon training as well.
Of
so
course.
It makes sense that he would at least be able to wield a sword, if not effectively. He was no samurai. He was no ninja. But he at least knew what end was the pointy bit, right? And how to swing it. Watching this fight for a third time, I will tell you. Well, actually, I'll stop. What were your impressions of just that part, the Finn and Kylo fight, before we get to Rey?
Finn held his own for what he knew how to do.
Okay?
Yes.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, you could see that. You could see that Kylo had him on the ropes the whole time.
Ken, what did you
There's
feel?
no way that he could compare it to Kylo. Like, but
Exactly
he tried.
exactly same as Hando. He clearly had no chance, but he did pretty well considering.
He did surprisingly well, right? He was able to at least not just get cut in two, right?
Yeah.
He did not get cut in twain immediately upon going against Kylo, right?
Well, that's the point. You're saying he was trained his entire life, yeah. Stormtroopers were either always cloned to be the perfect soldier or trained from birth.
Yeah.
And he, in that sense, he's the same as everybody else. Why did he last so long against a semi-trained Jedi turned semi-trained Sith?
Specifically, well,
That's pretty
we
powerful
have to
stuff.
we have to talk about the Sith thing later because that's a separate entity. Sith is not Dark Jedi. Sith is specifically a separate thing.
Okay.
But I just bring that up because that is something that people are focusing on. I think Disney very specifically has made the choice to separate that out. When Maz says, I've seen evil rise from the dark side multiple times. First it was the Sith, then it was the Empire, now it's the First Order. As saying that they are separate entities because the Sith is not equal to Dark Jedi. Note. But I think they're doing that
is an order of Dark Jedi.
Yeah, they're doing that to make a choice where they can now show a whole level of dark, I think. But the challenge when they have the fight with it is that, if you notice, right when they start fighting, Kylo's already hurt. He's bleeding. They notice it right before he throws Rey against the tree, that he's bleeding a lot from that bowcaster shot in his side. And he does the thing where he does, like, hit it, trying to say, like, I'm going to ignore this pain, but it's a lot.
I heard that he was hitting himself in order to generate rage. And
That's another way to see it as well. But I see it also as kind of, if I've been in pain before, and to kind of to get through that pain, I'm like, just ignore that. Let me move on, right? So either way, but it shows his wound. It shows how wounded he is, right? Because he's bleeding all over and he's stumbling from it already. So that's the first part. Rey's not in the equation. It's just him and Finn. Yes.
I think that entire shot with the fact that he took that straight in the side, everybody else who gets shot from that weapon gets blown away. He took it.
Again,
he actually took
raw
that
power
into his side. I think that shows how powerful a Dark Jedi he is. Considering he survived that at all, never mind the fact that he stood still on this bridge and took it to his internal organs
and, he's like,
and would not be moved.
And gets up and keeps going. So again, you set the stage. He is highly wounded. Not in a good way starting this fight. That's a very important piece of it. So then if you watch it, Finn is on the ropes the whole time. He is not doing well. In fact, the only time Finn scores anything against him, he is basically just save my life, backing up. He's just swinging for the hilt like a baseball bat, right? Just swinging, trying to stay alive. And really, he's more just defending himself. And then what happens is when it gets, and you say that missing, it's not that, no, Kylo was hit in the side. It was the side, though. It wasn't just a graze because it didn't take out the bridge or anything behind him. It didn't explode. He ate that bolt. And the energy didn't go anywhere else. So it was in his side. It just, he absorbed or kind of took the shot instead of it exploding everywhere. But in the fight, Finn, the only reason he even scores a hit is as they're going and Kylo puts the side exhaust against his shoulder and burns it into him. As Finn is able to push off, he wildly swings and just barely catches Kylo's arm.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And as soon as he catches Kylo's arm, Kylo's like, F that. And he turns around, disarms Finn with a quick move, throws the lightsaber into the snow, turns around behind Finn, and then racks him up the spinal cord, basically up the back, with the blade,
yeah, I forgot about
basically
that part, too.
thinking that he killed Finn, but at least ending that part of the fight, right? It was that quick. Finn at no point had an advantage. It was a happen that he got burned in the side, he's against a tree, pushes off the tree and just swing kinking and just catches him. And that makes Kylo say, we're done, watch. Bing, 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 and you're down. And just ends
and I
it.
need to watch this again.
And so, well, this is, again, 3 times I've watched it, and I was very specifically watching these scenes, taking notes, because of that. Because people were so like, da-da-da, and I would look for, did they ever have a point where they were winning? No.
So, Missing brought up something in the IRC that he thought that only bots or Force users could use lightsabers, and I was kind of under that impression well.
No.
So the key is the lightsaber is just a tool.
Think of what's his name? General
Grievous.
What's his face? The guy.
General Grievous,
yeah, General
who's an
Grievous,
alien
right?
inside a bot body, and all his troops, the shock troopers that were using lightsabers, but So a lightsaber is a tool. You turn it on, it shoots. The reason most people never use a lightsaber, I've got a blaster. Why do I need a lightsaber? I can shoot it and just boom, shoot you. Lightsabers are a specific tool for those who are skilled, because and he does bring it up, lightsabers are stupid dangerous. Stupid dangerous. Yeah. I have my mock lightsaber, and we do martial arts training in ninjutsu as a samurai sword, which is about as close as you get as a real weapon to a lightsaber for how you would learn to train it. And there's things you can't do with a lightsaber that you train with a sword, because there's parts where you can put the sword and lay it on your back, the blunt side, to protect yourself. You can't do that with a lightsaber. Oh, I decapitated my own arm, right? And so part of the discussion why mostly Force users are the only one that use the lightsaber as an archaic weapon is because they have the skill, the being affinity of the Force to protect themselves and be aware of where this weightless blade is at all times.
It's like saying only a samurai uses a sword, because they're the only ones trained enough nowadays to use a sword.
Anybody could pick up a sword and swing it, which is what you see Finn do. All right, Hando?
I was going to say, if you have a lightsaber in your hand, the person that you're most a threat to is the Jedi standing next to you. If you're fighting and you're like, ah, and then, oh, Fred, I'm sorry, I cut your arm off.
I would like to reference right now to Glasgow. A few years ago, there were gang fights in Glasgow, the city in Scotland, and exactly that happened. There was a group of two groups against each other of rival gangs or whatever. One of them had a katana for some reason, and he did that. He raised it behind him, over his shoulder like this, while charging in, and stabbed his best friend through the eye and killed him.
Again, deadly weapons, and could you imagine, that's with a regular sword. Could you imagine with a lightsaber that theoretically could cut through almost anything at a glance, right? And that's another discussion, because one of the discussions was why, my cousin and I talked about that, why wasn't Finn cut in twain, cut in half? One of the things that I also have to discuss, this is the first time they've showed lightsaber duels where people use the swords as you really train with swords. You do not train to hit someone with the bottom part of the sword. You train to hit someone with the tip of the sword. The reason being, that's where the fastest, most powerful part of their weapon is, and it's the furthest from you. The reason you use a ranged weapon or a weapon with distance is so that you have distance, so that a person with a knife can't get you. And so when you train with a sword, you don't train to cut with something close to the hand. You train to cut with the tip, all the way at the edge. And so that's why when he cuts up Finn's back, he doesn't cut all the way through him, because he's cutting with that last inch or half inch of the blade, which is how you train with a sword. It is quite honestly how swords are designed to be used. And so otherwise, yes, he would have cut him in half. That's why also so many of the fight scenes were at little slicing bits of them, is because two people with swords are going to stay at the edge of how those swords touch. Because as soon as you go in, you're committed. Someone's going to die.
Oh,
and so you don't just go in there let's swipe swords.
I studied fencing, foil fencing for a while, and you're trying to maintain a distance between you and your opponent at all times. It's always it's this, and the minute you go like this, I'm sorry for anyone who's not watching the video, but I'm bringing my hands closer to each other. When the opponents start coming towards together, someone's dying within the next half second.
Exactly, and I actually had to demonstrate that with my cousin yesterday. I grabbed a couple of my bow and my wood swords to show him, because he's like, but they're masters, right? Wouldn't these battles last forever? I was like, no. Masters, when they sword fight, they don't bend swords off each other. They set up for that conflict for a while. It could be a minute, it could be 5 minutes that they're seeing each other and kind of walking around, finding an opening. Because once the conflict begins, I don't care how skilled you two people are, it's likely going to take 30 seconds or less, maybe a minute or two before it's resolved. Because every move you're doing is not to hit the sword, it's to hit the person. You're trying to kill the
somebody.
person.
Let me just say this. When I was studying fencing, the novices, such as myself, they would be the longest battles. The masters, 8 seconds.
Seconds.
Yeah.
Seconds, yeah. You don't go smack, smack, smack. The only smack you do is because I'm moving your weapon out of the way to then attack you with the actual mine. And with a lightsaber even more so, because I don't even have to do it so I hit you with the pointy bit. I just have to get it in and hit you, and I'll cut you in half, right? So that is just a discussion about why lightsaber battles in reality would be, moments if it was in regular fights. Anyhow, so that talks to that Kylo versus Finn part of the fight. That happens. Kylo gets wounded in the arm. Finn goes down. Looks like he's out, right? But he's not splayed in half. He's just cut up the back with that edge of the sword, which, as also discussed with my cousin, lightsaber is also one of the worst weapons in the world because it instantly cauterizes the wound.
Right.
So nobody bleeds out from a lightsaber wound. So in a way, getting cut up the back like that actually also saves him because it's also seared closed. So it's not like he's bleeding everywhere. He's just really, really injured. Can't move, whatever. So part of why he survives, by the way. All right, the next piece is the fight between Kylo and Ren, right? Or Rey. Kylo and Rey. That fight goes on. So after the initial one, Rey wakes up. They have the fight over the lightsaber, like we talked about, Hando, where who can force pull it. And it goes to Rey, right? Which surprises Kylo off the bat like what? From there, if you watch Rey's fighting, everything she's doing initially is kind of out of anger and is as unskilled as you could ever imagine. She is poking at him with the edge of it. She's reached over.
She's using her bow staff. She's using it like her bow staff.
All her moves are like the bow staff. And that's also leads to one of the theories, conspiracy, that we may see that as her weapon versus a lightsaber. It's like a saber version of a bow staff, which would be cool. But so you see her poking with totally unskilled, and really the whole battle is her running away from him. That he is coming after, and he very specifically after he takes out Finn again, hits his side again like, oh, I'm injured, this sucks. And then as they go through, like they're flailing back and forth, right? And only reason he doesn't take her out when they finally jump up and get to the edge of the woods there, once the first crevice starts going because the planet's destabilizing, is because he's holding her down saying, I want to, train you. You need training in the Force. You need to be skilled. You don't have the skill. He's not trying to kill her, right? He is trying to win her over to their side because she'd be so powerful. So there's all these reasons why she holds her own against the skilled, Sith Padawan type thing, or Dark Force Padawan, that he doesn't just rake her out and kill her right away. So that's the first part of the fight. Did you guys see that piece, or did you note that? Because again, you guys saw it
Yes.
once. But
Yep.
so she's on the defense the whole time. She's actually running. Finally, he gets her, puts her down, doesn't stop her, and then he makes the mistake of reminding her about the Force. At which point, she actually then, in my opinion, gives in to the Force. Where I think in previous movies, they always show that people are trying to use the Force and direct the Force to say, do what I want you to do. This is showing her letting the Force guide her.
She's channeling the Force.
Yeah, she's truly, and the Force is doing more of the work than she is. Because when she comes off of it, she's empowered, enabled, she has more power from it, and is doing finally something that is close to skillful. It's still not like an expert, it's still not amazing, but it is backing her out of the fight, right? And she does take that moment where she channels and rolls the eyes up a little and focuses and kind of calms herself. And now she's using the Force, right? Prior to that, she was just wailing. And she comes out and overwhelms him from that, and they have she scores a couple big hits on him. But she pushes his saber down on the ground, and that was the first fight. At first I thought that was probably a sign of the Force actually empowering her some. But my cousin made the point, actually you saw her as a traitor or whatever, smuggler and stuff. She was strong. She was already strong. She was living and climbing the ropes. And if you look at Rey or at Kylo, you can argue he's kind of not like the big, strong, guy. So maybe they were actually matched for strength without the Force. But I do think she does also use the Force, pushes his blade into the ground, and then comes, and you'd think initially when she takes her saber over and cuts, that she's actually cutting his arm off, but doesn't. Cuts down, ends up cutting his leg, which wounds him, right? And then finally does the final slice up the face to scar him there. Before that, when she first pokes him first in the shoulder, so pokes him with it, cuts his leg, and then flays him up the face. And those are the moves she does. And the only reason it doesn't end there is the planet's destabilizing. A crevice forms between the two. They're separated. She realizes she needs to get off the planet. Goes to Finn, seeing what condition is in. Chewie comes up in a Millennium Falcon. They go and they're off. Right. So that's that battle sequence. What did you guys think of that piece? That's my synopsis of it. Did you feel it was different?
No, that's pretty much how it went down. I gave my interpretation of why she was able to get her hands on the lightsaber in the first place. And that's the thing that I think was emphasized in that fight, not just them having this conflict and then her, being reminded of, let the Force flow through you. And I think it was beat for beat.
I'd agree with that.
And Ken, what did you think? You same kind of deal? Just like...
No, I have nothing to say. I agree.
Yeah. All right, so that's my answer, because a lot of people are just why they hated Kylo. My thought is, again, Padawan, he wants to be dark, inner demons, because, his parents are like the ultimate on the other side, right? They're the opposite of what Kylo's trying to do. And just the conflict he's suffering, and that now, as Supreme Leader basically says, he's now ready to finish his training. And so I have an expectation that we're going to see a lot of future development of both what the Force can do and what these characters can do in whatever future movies we see. All right. That's my going into the characters. We touched some plot things. I think we really need to get into some of the big points people had. There was an article that I brought that I mentioned before, and there's a link to that, or if you look it up, the Huffington Post article that was out there about the 40 big plot holes or mistakes with Force Awakens. There's also, if you look it up, that's even better. There's someone who, if you look down the links a little bit, it's someone debunks the Huffington Post one. If you read that one, please do. It does a great job of basically point for point saying why this guy's an asshat, didn't even watch the movie, and doesn't know what he's talking about. Just to throw it out there, because that actually answers a lot of those questions up front. But I would like to bring up an opportunity for you guys to each bring up probably what some of your biggest challenges you had in the plot. Because for me, as a whole, I will agree, I will not deny, this was a lot of a take on the original Episode 4, A New Hope, for general plot. But I expound upon that and say what JJ actually did was take all three of the original movies and essentially combine them into one movie. Because I felt like it had the action and scenes that you got from, like, Empire Strikes Back. You had some of the Force ability and stuff that you get from Return of the Jedi, with the overall plot and introduction of characters that you get from A New Hope. That's just my thought. But do you guys have, any one of you, like, the big plot point that you're struggling with? I'll start with you, Hondo. You got your arms up there, your hands up there, and you kind of look thoughtful. Is there any specific plot points that you were like, WTF?
Going back to what Ken was saying earlier, here's something that I wish they... it's not really a problem with the plot. I was kind of hoping that what they did when all of the planets got hit, was that they showed all of the Force-sensitive people... I was
suffer
kind of
the loss of millions of lives.
You see Force-sensitive people, even mildly Force-sensitive people, go down in like a seizure, yeah. And even if they had somehow referenced like what Luke felt at that moment, the most powerful Force user in the galaxy at the moment, or beside Kylo. But I was kind of hoping that we'd see that. My biggest thing was what we talked about earlier with Ken and the planets and the whole science behind that. But it wasn't really in the end that big of a deal, because they're telling a story and like, here's what happens, and then all of a sudden everyone sees it, and then Finn says, I know what that was, and here's what we need to do about it. So it's cool, but that would be my biggest little nitpicky thing.
Okay, Kuro, how about yourself?
Trying to think of something. I think that I need to watch it more.
No, that's the thing. I gained a lot from watching it again.
I think that anything that I have questions about, I feel will be answered in any of the upcoming movies.
I tend to feel the same.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And I need to go back and watch the old ones again. I really feel like I want to watch them again, and then go back and
watch Force Awakens again. So exactly. I will say that does lend itself a lot, and you're lucky because you have the Laserdisc. You can watch the unmolested versions, because those are the best. Because
flip them over like every
halfway through
the movie.
That is funny. But yeah, so that's what the challenge is, and we talked about the faster than the hyperspace weapon, the Star Killer base, things like that. Go ahead, Honda.
No, I just remembered something as well, and of course this has been talked about to death on the internet, but mentioning it here for us. The whole reason why Captain Phasma, Finn and Han go up to her and say, hey, lower the shields or we're going to shoot you. And she's like, okay. you know.
Yep.
Yeah,
And I guess that's supposed to be kind of answered in the next movies. But of course, a soldier and a captain would say, "Well, if you put it right here, I'll go down quick, or you could torture me, but those shields aren't coming down." So F
Also, is she a robot or a person? That was
She's
never
a
really
person.
cleared up.
No, the whole
she's
point there is all of them are people at this point. You know,
yeah,
that
she
we
is
see.
she's real, like a flesh and blood person.
Yeah. So the idea there is there's also supposed to be from the previous books a level of interaction between Phantasma and each of and Finn and all those groups that are supposed to be more to that, which I don't know for sure because I haven't read it. But the idea there, and we don't see enough with it, right, is that they coerce her into it on threat of her life. One of the challenges of it not being a clone, right, where if clones are going to sacrifice themselves without even thinking. Individuals, maybe not so much. That maybe I do value my own life more than I do the cause. And so there's a point where you can at least make the argument for why she would drop the shield. Yes, that's one of the biggest probably challenges to this movie is that Phantasma doesn't get enough screen time and isn't given enough emphasis on her character for having such unique armor, being a female in a command role, all those kind of things, right? And so
I'm sure we're going to get plenty of her in the next movie.
I hope, right? If she was left in a garbage compactor, maybe she's dead.
I was going to say, assuming she isn't killed by Kylo afterwards when he realizes what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too.
We'll see, right? We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. I hope we'll see more, right?
I can't believe they blew it up again. An even bigger Death Star. They blew it up this.
And one of the discussions
They've learned by now.
One of the arguments was that, so the idea with this one versus other ones, they don't have to move the planet, the Starkiller gun, right? Just to get power sources. They can shoot it from across the galaxy anywhere, which is its own slickness, right? So, but like good old-fashioned evil, if it didn't work the last time, let's make it bigger this time and make it work. So we'll see. But okay. So with that, they kind of just. And Ken, did you have any specific plot points that you were still lingering on, or?
No, I think I've answered. I've mentioned all of them so far.
All right. So with that, then, what I'd like to bring up is just some of the kind of general things I also noted watching it the third time. And I'm curious because Missings is doing a whole typing in there about what's going on. I'm curious what he's about to say. And so again, and that's where it says like Phasma's got a lot of marketing going into this, but not much time in the movie. So yeah. See, those beams should have been so much longer to get where they were headed to than they did. Yeah, again, we don't know the time it took for them to fly. One of the big issues in the movies as a whole is time is not well explained. Because one of the first things that comes up is the time that it takes for, well, so again, hyperspace communication versus seeing a beam come and hit you in the face. Don't know. But time. Poll to you guys. Because we know that this movie takes place about 30 years after the originals, right? They basically stated that, and that's, so everyone can age properly and that kind of thing. So the question is, how old are each of the main characters in this movie? Meaning, for me, the primaries, Kylo Ren, Finn, and Rey. What were your guys' impressions of their age?
I imagine that what they're going to say is they're like 15, because that's how these things tend to work. These 25-ish looking old characters tend to be 15. So that's that. I'm gonna guess quite young. That's my guess.
All right, what do you think, Kur0? Just in general, impression, because I think they're all different ages, but just kind of in general, where do you put them?
That's about right. I mean, they're like seem like they're in their 20s.
Okay.
Right in there.
So as Hando puts his cans back on, Hando, how old would you guess the main characters were? Kylo, Rey, and Finn as a whole.
What their individual ages are in the movie?
Yeah, like the characters.
I would say both Kylo and Rey are about 26.
And
is
Finn?
My best guess. Oh, Finn. Yeah, about the same. I'd say he's about.
Okay.
Yeah, or late mid-20s.
So the reason I bring this up because time is something that's not well discussed in the movie, other than like years of time spanning. But how old characters are is never mentioned. By the way, never mentioned. And
this goes back to my theory from earlier.
Part of the kid things, part of various parts about the age is something that goes into the whole story. Because we note that specifically Ben Solo, so Kylo Ren, had gone through and been trained for some period of time before becoming Kylo and going to the dark side, and that has been a length of years. it makes sense to me that Kylo is somewhere in his late 20s, early 30s. Reason being, and I'd say really late 20s, we know at the end of Return of the Jedi, Han Solo and Leia are basically an item. It makes sense that somewhere in maybe a year or two after that, they likely got married or somehow consummated that relationship. Which
I don't think they're married, to be honest.
So that's the thing. They may not have actually gotten married, but somehow that relationship probably led to their child not long after, right? It's not like they just ran around, because we know they split up at some time afterwards and also ran amok themselves. So Kylo was basically conceived somewhere earlier probably in that relationship, which would make me guess that he's somewhere around like that late 20s, early 30 time frame. Basically the time frame of these movies. So I put him personally as kind of the oldest of the group. Beyond that, I would say that essentially, yeah, if anyone has to take off, by all means. And so it looked like Ken had to leave there for us, so we are saddened by that. But if I need to, I wonder if I can switch this up. All right. Unfortunately, I don't think there's an easy way for me to run this over, so... poor Ken had to leave us. All right, but to get to that point, Kylo and... Actually, we'll see if it reorients itself. Aha! It mostly did. Awesome. It did it for me. Although I wonder... Yeah, I'll leave it like that. So beyond that, though, when I look at Finn, he's been a stormtrooper for a level of years, right? Or whatever. We don't know for sure. But I personally view him as being somewhere in my thinking like mid-20s. Low to mid-20s. Still looks somewhat young, inexperienced, things like that. But as a whole, I gain that, yeah, okay. Let's see, I need to kill that. Yeah. That he's probably his mid-20s. And then Rey, I personally look at and say that I think of her in her like late teens to early 20, where she's like 17 to 20-ish years old. Again, we don't have hard facts.
Really?
That's how I see it, because Rey does look younger. Of the group, I'd say she's the youngest. But the reason I also put it in there is it allows for some consideration about the possibility of origin, right? Because we know that for some length of time, and I believe that probably as a young age, they first identified when Leia says that basically that Ben always had some darkness in him, and how Han says he had too much of Vader in him. So they witnessed that early, right? They kind of noted that. That they probably sent him to go train with Luke early on, when he was probably, before his teens or right around the beginning of his teens time frame, to start learning to try to control this darkness. Because
he's too old.
At the end of this whole story, right? Rey runs into Luke and there's that whole scene. But as it continues on, then like Finn, we don't have any real knowledge of his age. I just look at him. I'm kind of giving that. I don't think he's a teenager, but I don't think he's 30, right? I think he's kind of early 20s, somewhere in there. But Kylo, because of how they did that, and there was some length of time he trained with Luke before going evil. And then he went evil, and the First Order has been around for some length of time, and he's basically the top of the First Order outside of the General. So he's had some time to mature in this. Han and Leia have been split up for a length of time, and they split up because of Kylo going bad, essentially, right? And because of what failed with Luke and what he was working on. It's basically what it sounds like. So that's kind of where I put that age gap in there. So now we get to Rey. We don't know Rey's age, but all we see is that Rey has her flashback, and I'll start talking about the flashback scene with the lightsaber. In that scene, she looks anywhere, and I have trouble with this, between like 6 and 8 years old. In my opinion, she's young. One of the things to note in the flashback, she's being the person that's pulling her away is Simon Pegg's character, is the junk dealer. And so it's his hand that's pulling her away as she's looking up at the ship leaving, supposedly as her parents are leaving her. What that tells me is somebody left her with the junk dealer to be taken care of, right? Specifically. To say, the salvage guy say, like, you watch over my child, kind of deal. Which, again, I think... Go ahead.
It's more like to that guy, it's like she was sold off or something.
Possibly, but I wouldn't think if she was reaching out for her parents that she was sold. Maybe it was, but I have my theory behind this, alright? So, Wayne's theory of origins and where the next movies are going.
Alright.
Well, actually, no, I don't want to do that fully yet. I'll go into more of what I saw in it, right? So I'm going to go through the notes. But it talks to the plot and talks to some of the story elements. So one of the first things I noted was, why Jakku? Why did we start on Jakku? Because that's been bothering me. Not only was Rey on Jakku, right? that Poe went to Jakku, was sent there to meet up with. By the way, I do not know the name of the guy who has the details and the plans. I need to look it up because he's obviously important. He knew Kylo as a child because when he sees Kylo on the planet, he specifically says, "You were not born of the darkness. That I know your parents, I know your history, and you were not always dark." So he's very specifically trying to influence Kylo to say you're a good guy, which again continues that whole trend of what the issues are with him, or that struggle he has. But Jakku is where they look for to find the details on where Luke went. It's also where we find Rey. Coinkydink? I don't know. All right.
Millennium Falcon was there, correct?
The Millennium Falcon's also in Jakku. Coinkydink? I don't know. Right? Maybe that's how things ended up there. Don't know. Other things that came into, but I mean that's like very obvious in your face. That why is everyone in one place? Interesting, right? Let's see. One of the things noted, Rey in her AT-AT where she has her house. One of the things she has in there is a doll of a rebel pilot.
Oh yeah.
Little orange suit, and it looks like something handmade. Don't know if she made it or someone gave it to her as a young child, but it almost looks like something she would have remembered or had with her when she was sold off or was left on the planet, right? Looks like something she's had around for a long time. She also has the helmet, but that more looks like a spoil of war. It was I think it's number 738 was on the side of the helmet, which I don't know if that applies to any character in particular. I think it said 738. I tried to note it down, but they used kind of that odd text, so I'm not sure. Rey is waiting for her family. Let's see. What else do we have in there? Oh, so again, there's a discussion to be had about the Force powers as a whole because a lot of people have an issue with how powerful Rey was and how quickly she picked up her powers. But one of the things I argue is that they actually did a good job of showing every one of her powers at an early stage before she used it for sure. And so some of that being like, her innate knowledge of the Millennium Falcon when she didn't know how she got it, she had piloting skills, she wasn't sure how she did it. That's the Force, right? Her doing the... I didn't really have the Force pull thing that kind of she did on the spot, but there was the one with like the mind control doing the Jedi mind trick early on when she first runs into BB-8, and Tito has BB-8 in the net, which by the way was also I was told was the actor Willow was actually in that character suit for Tito. Another one of the ones you didn't know was in it, like Daniel Craig being the one that releases her as the stormtrooper that she does the mind trick on. And Simon Pegg being the junk dealer.
Yeah, I did not know Simon Pegg was in there.
Well, changed voices completely, all of them. Are you kidding? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that she actually uses the Force on him to kind of convince him to leave the droid, because the droid's worth a ton of money. 60 full rations of food. Why would he just give it up to her because she yelled at him? Other than she convinced him to let it go. A little bit of Force push, right? A little bit of mind trick. Uses the mind trick on Daniel Craig's character afterwards. Big part of that, right? Let's see. What else was with that? Oh, okay, notes were... Let's see. Oh, there's also a note that when they were talking about looking at Finn at his record while he didn't discharge his weapon, that they actually had on the display a baby picture of Finn. Him as a child with information that unfortunately was in a language I couldn't read. Because there's one of the conspiracy theories that who's Finn, right? What's his background? What child is he? And one of the kind of little too convenient for me, but could be theories, is that he's actually Lando Calrissian's son.
He's the love child between Lando and Princess Leia.
Yeah, he's a little too dark chocolate for that. But there was a joke about that as well. It's like, all that time when, Han was taking care of Leia, or I mean when Calrissian was taking care of Leia. Yeah, he was taking care of Leia. There is that joke out there, which is kind of funny. But beyond that, so let's see. I forgot to do this, and hopefully it's still working. Yeah, everyone can see the live stream, right? Because I forgot to go and double check it. Yay, it's still live.
Yeah, I looked at it earlier.
Okay,
Seemed
good.
like it was working.
Well, I was making sure it was still said streaming, because that was during the crash. I hadn't gone back to it. Anyhow, also, why? So when Rey first goes to pick up the lightsaber, one of the things she does, let's see. Oh yeah, I talked again about Han not recognizing Rey at all, that when they first meet, basically tells Chewie to drop her and Finn in a pod and get them out. Talks about many orders of evil, including the Sith, the Empire, and the First Order. I think that was Maz, or that might have been Han. when
that sounds
Rey
like
goes,
Maz.
Yeah, I thought it was Maz. When Rey goes down to pick up the lightsaber, and she's hearing children yelling no, and it almost sounds like her own voice that's drawing her down there. She goes in, the door opens automatically for her. She walks right in. When she gets in there, and that series of events happen where she gets the flashes. One, you hear Yoda specifically talking to her and say, was it Yoda says, it's like believe in yourself or train yourself. Says, you need to train yourself. And there were the Knights of Ren or whatever's behind Ren. There were 7 of them total, 6 following them. It looks like I said that Rey was definitely with the junk dealer in that scene. That Maz talks about the Force. That you see Luke with the clawed hand, and it almost looks like he's working with R2 because one of the convenient factors, why does R2 wake up when he does, this and that. One of my theories after all the seeing that is that, okay, and this goes into the timeline of ages, right? So that was kind of the quick scenes that you see in that flashback. Her running into the Force, Rey. You hear both Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice just saying Rey, and you see Yoda specifically saying you need to train yourself, or get yourself trained.
Is that exactly what he says?
I have
you need to get yourself trained?
Well, but it's about training. It's something about training. Yoda saying that. I don't know the exact verbiage because I was noting it as I heard it, but I can't read my writing. It was dark.
Huh.
But I did see this part also where Obi-Wan specifically says Rey, but that was from the original actor. They cut it out, some of the original things. They talked about Death Star being a death ray. Use that Rey, just say his voice real quick. Let's see. That was the main parts about that. I jokingly said that it's amazing how the First Order still doesn't use guardrails.
Guardrails are for wussies.
Yeah. All right. So with that, let's discuss theories, conspiracies, stuff like that. Because I think that's
quite some interesting things about the production of this film too that I thought was quite interesting.
All right. Go ahead and shoot it at us.
This is for the last couple of years, most films have been shot on digital. This is actually one of the few recent films that has been shot on actual film.
They went back to film?
Yeah, a lot of this was shot on 70mm film, which is kind of odd.
That's cool.
And the latest Quentin Tarantino film was also shot on 70mm.
Yeah, the notorious.
It's the new retro hotness.
Yep. So this film was actually one of the big kickbacks for coming back to film, and a lot of these directors trying to revitalize that.
Interesting.
So that was kind of cool. I thought that was quite interesting in the film production aspect.
That's cool.
Movie.
Well, and it is gorgeous. It looks the part, right? So it is gorgeous to see.
And it had a very lively feel to the whole movie too, which I think has to do with being shot on film. So that's pretty cool.
Very cool. All right. So Hando, you had mentioned some potential conspiracies and things like that.
Well, I mean, that was my biggest one. Everyone's like, and especially because Maz says, oh, that's Luke's lightsaber. And, just thinking about it, it's like, no, Luke's lightsaber is green. That is Darth Vader, / Anakin's lightsaber. And you think about what that lightsaber was involved in, a whole lot of death. And a whole lot of innocent life being taken. And I, just sitting around thinking about it, I'm like, and so it chooses Rey over Kylo. But of course, it was Luke's. Luke's ran around with it for a long time.
Yeah.
But if we're to believe that, the whole story of, the crystal actually takes on sort of the aspect of its owner, that's a personality conflicted crystal, man. I mean, there's a lot.
That's unfortunately not officially
that
canon.
Crystal needs some therapy.
So
yeah.
One thing I do bring up again. This is my little tirade about the Sith thing. I'll say it once more. I think that the Disney is specifically trying to take away from that Sith piece being the dark side because that's too limiting. One master, one apprentice, and to get away from that nonsense, they're just saying evil, darkness, the dark side. And Sith not being the official part of it. So I think that's a very specific thing that Disney's doing with that. Other conspiracy. So, talk about, might as well get into just the end sequence, the fact that we find Luke at the very end. But some of the discussion is, isn't it convenient that we have maps leading to where he went? I thought he was on a mission, on an adventure to go find this Jedi temple, but we have a map that says right where he is. So couldn't he have just hyperspaced right there? Instead of the, looks like a multi-point journey to get there?
It's like he's on a pilgrimage to he's like, oh, I screwed up and things went bad and I need to just go on a walkabout through the galaxy. And I guess if he's going to the original, Jedi planet, which is called Tython, I think, or Tithon, You know, it's like he's a slow walking, like sort of like sad Hulk music. You know, like oh crap, things went really bad.
Gotcha.
I just need to go and.
All right, so here's my theory. All right, my theory is the whole situation with Kylo, with Ben Solo happened and set him off the path where he thought, I'm failing, I can't do this. This is also where the ages thing comes up. And I just kind of had a revelation on my own theory yesterday talking about it. Is that, so they say he takes off and because he feels like he needs to revitalize his search for the Jedi Temple to figure out how to start over and do it right the next time. Because obviously he failed, it crushed him, he almost probably died himself. He couldn't even save his own nephew from the dark side, so truly crushing. So from there, he runs off to try to find a way to revitalize the Force. My theory is, while he was out and about, he traveled multiple places finding clues about the original, Jedi Temple and where it came from.
And that's a story that happens constantly in the books is, they're going to find holocrons, the ancient crypt of blah, blah, blah.
Exactly, right?
Of course, and the
remember,
mandate of both Sith
matter.
and Jedi. Oh, yeah, but I mean, the mandate of both Sith and Jedi was if you became... I think even if you became a master, you had to make a holocron and pass your teachings on, and so.
Yeah. So I think, and it's similar to what Missing's saying there, that he traveled about, probably had R2 with him, right, for a good length, finding details about the Jedi Temple, which essentially is what's contained in R2's memory banks about that first part of the path, the main map that they kind of already had, right, was where the journey started and where he was heading. But
exactly.
they didn't really have it, right? R2, I think, was out cold data mining it back and recreated it from what they had done. He recreated and found and figured out the rest of the map. And that's when he comes to. Or kind of, there's a convenience there that's not been fully understood. But part of me thinks that actually Luke predetermined some of these things by programming in some things to R2, as well as setting the stage for his own path. So that I think probably what happened, and this is totally theory, while he's searching for the Jedi Temple, and one of the reasons that nobody knows the origin for Rey is that he was out searching, had a lot of adventures, came across somebody, Marla Jade, who knows, somebody who he was quite taken with. While he's out and about, separate from what's going on with the politics from Han, from Leia, from any of them. They just know he's about, and during that time frame, he gives birth, he hooks up with and somehow has, Rey during that time frame. My theory continues that because we don't know who the mother is, we don't know what's going on with that, perhaps initially, as a family, they continued the journey to find the Jedi Temple. But something happens that's negative and evil or bad in the process. Maybe they run into some darkness as they try to find the light or the origin, and the mother gets killed. During that process, he still has his daughter, and they've gotten through, and he wants to continue the journey, but he feels like it is too dangerous to continue with his daughter. At which point, to protect her, both because he is afraid he may fail in keeping her on the light side because he feels the amount of potential force power she has, he drops her on a planet very similar to what he grew up in Tatooine, or that himself and his father and before, right, to keep her safe and protected, and sets a deal up with the junk dealer, right? Just make sure you keep an eye on her in the general terms, right? Other than that, just make sure she's safe and can do for whatever. Doesn't mean he has to treat her like a daughter, just keep her safe. Sets that up with details, right? Sets it up so that she's at least taken care of. And in doing so, on Jakku might have left details about where he was going next. Maybe he had found all the details for where that Jedi Temple was before going off in that last stint. And so all of those details of him planning and getting ready for that last mission or whatever he had to do, he left on Jakku. And then he took off.
And in the specific care of that guy that knew the Solo family.
Yeah, something like that. It might have been in his care or worked with him for it. Or
maybe
somehow.
He was the one that was watching over, like in the background, watching over Rey, and not the junk dealer.
Well, we know the junk dealer takes her. We know that much. We don't know who was watching over. But my theory being that the reason that information is on Jakku, along with Rey, is that that's his final staging point before going out for that last mission for the temple. If Luke is her father, of course, right? And that's why you have that split in the map. You have those first details for everything he did prior, and then after perhaps his wife died or whatever the case might have been, he needed to adventure the rest on his own and couldn't even risk his own daughter. And so yes, leaving the hands of a friend of the thing or whatever, he took off and went. And that's why when they finally get all the details together, link the map and get the details from Jakku, they can just piece it together and she can essentially go straight to him. Otherwise, it's kind of like there needs to be some adventure or pilgrimage of her finding him kind of deal, right? But in this case, she's able to go straight to him and have the final scene, which if you look at that, my other conjecture is, I don't believe Luke, one, has been staying on that planet the entire 30 years, or whatever time frame has occurred between when he left and where he is today. Because we don't know exactly what that time
I agree
is.
with that. Yep.
I think that's where he ended up, right? My cousin said he noted there was a piece of rock there when he was standing there that may have been like a gravestone, don't know. But it also looks like if you look at that whole trail that she rides up, there's steps, right? That look like they're fairly ancient.
Mm-hmm.
There's rocks that are cut out with a bunch of different slats kind of over each other that look like they've been there a long time. I would like to believe that Luke didn't build all of that himself on some random island, in the middle of some ocean somewhere, on some random planet. I'm pretty sure he found a place and has been there trying to gain its secrets, right? Or get a connection or do something with that location, which is why we haven't seen him. She comes, there's no question he knows she's there. He knows that she's a Force user. Just when she's flying in, right? No question. It's a little island. You would see the Millennium Falcon go, meow, right? So we know he knows. Not like he's surprised. Likelihood, he even senses maybe who she is, right? Or to some level of that, some extra connection. Because we know she's attuned, and we know you can feel the awakening. She comes up through looks like a little hut at a point of it, up to the top of the mountain where he's standing. Reaches in, he turns his face, initially just looks at her. She looks at him like, oh, I found you. Instead of saying anything else with recognition, right, she pulls out the lightsaber, hands it towards him. They have a moment where they're just looking at each other. He pulls the hood off, and it's almost like he's ready to say something. And you can see emotion in his face. And I think it has to be the reason that they stopped it right there. Any word he would have said is a spoiler to the plotline for what goes forward in the next movie, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what he said. Anything he says, that's the spoiler. So my theory is that's kind of how they lead up to why Rey was left on the planet, assuming she is Luke's daughter, and where we get to where we are for the next movie. That's Wayne's looking at the future, where it's going.
I got a little bit different when she goes up, when she finally climbs the top of the hill and goes up to him, and she pulls a lightsaber out and she's presenting it to him, blade towards him, by the way, which is not the way you're supposed to do that. Just my old fencing lessons kicking in.
Oh, he looks at it. You don't want to accidentally hit the button because then you're just going to cut right through yourself.
Well, she should actually hand it out, parallel to her chest. Is the way you would do that. But anyway, I'm just being a fencing nerd. Luke looks at her and the lightsaber as if he's about to shed tears.
I agree.
And it does look like he's about to say something, but you could see there's he doesn't go running up to her like, "Where'd you find this? Where have you been? My God!" He's almost like, "Oh, do I have to deal with this right now?"
Well, I would say either to deal with this, or I knew this was coming and it's finally time, or something to that effect is kind of where my mind goes with it.
Yeah, hey, of course, like you said, he knew it was coming. He knew that she was flying in, but he looks at her and the lightsaber with sadness, and so you know that there's a bunch coming. With the neck. Oh, and also now I don't know if it was it actually the scene of did Maz Kanata actually hand her the lightsaber in her palace, or did she goes and touches it in the box? Because remember in the trailers, the very first trailers that were sent out. You see what looks like Luke, supposedly handing the lightsaber to her, and you hear his voice saying, "The Force is strong in my family. I have it. My sister has it. You have it too." So
Maz hands it to her after she rejected it from the initial visions, because she gets the visions. She finds herself falling out of the room. Maz goes and gets the lightsaber, brings it to her, and says, "This is basically yours. It called out for you. This belonged to people in the past, but it called you. You need to take it." And she's like, "Nope."
Was that scene? But was that scene of?
I would have to go compare it again. I don't know, because I think that's also just interesting cutting of the trailers. Because I honestly don't think the trailers gave away any of the plot. They did a masterful job of kind of blending them out there. So no, I don't think that actually did anything negative. So, but I don't know for sure on that piece. But again, that's just my take on how I see the progression of that story and where it's going. I thought it was amazing how they did it. I really do. I don't know how much more I have to add on it other than we can bring up specifics along the board. I can talk the entire movie because I thought there were so many details that were amazing. I obviously had a ball with it. I really enjoyed it. I've seen it 3 times. I will likely see it more. I can see owning it for sure.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Oh, I'm gonna call out Boston, the people of Boston. When I was in the movie theater with you, the people of Boston, and you did not cheer when you saw the Millennium Falcon, shame on you. Shame on you. I'm thoroughly disappointed. I let out my own personal nerd squee. Nobody else said anything. Everyone was just like, I don't understand what happened there. I was thoroughly disappointed in the people in Boston. People of Boston. Do better next time, damn it.
Well, it's funny. It's been longer now, so there was less enthusiasm when I went this time. First 2 times, there was definitely still the cheers. I had to hold myself back from moments before some reveal was about to happen. I was personally just trying to keep an eye on things, trying to find all the little side characters and stuff. But yeah, there were some moments just
man.
holy yes.
I saw the Millennium Falcon and I was like, huh, oh my god. Like, and there was like some dude behind me, a fucking nerd. I was like,
hey,
you're in a Star Wars movie and you're
really?
calling me
Wow.
a fucking nerd?
Yeah,
I was like, seriously.
I feel bad in a lot of ways for the people who did not just truly enjoy this movie, who didn't just let their childhood gush and take it for what it was. I feel bad for the people who
this is awesome.
tried to hate this movie. I cried the first time I saw it multiple times in the first 20 minutes because I was just like, not only is this happening and I'm here, it's so good. And there's so many things happening that I enjoy. And the action sequence of the Millennium Falcon and the humor they did with BB-8 and everyone else, where it's flying around and BB-8 falls over the first time, boom. And the next time comes and shoots out his little harpoon things to hold himself, which also sets the stage for how he has mobility. Awesome, right?
The other thing I heard in the theater was, like, there were guys that were there with their girlfriends, and I heard this from several different groups of people. Their girlfriends were like, oh, what does that mean? What's that? Oh, what really is that? It's like, oh man, it's like there's so many chicks here that haven't seen the original movies. This is crazy.
So I can say this about the my 24-hour marathon. There was nobody in that theater that hadn't seen a Star Wars before.
You were at home there.
And I will tell you the level.
Diehard people.
Oh my goodness. Well, and admittedly, it was something looking around when you saw like the various groups of people there and people I just interacted with, chatted to. You know, the cute little Asian chick up in the corner that was just in a little Star Wars like rebel hoodie by herself going to a marathon for 24 hours. Things like it's like, you are my people. People who are just coming here for this on their own. It's like, yes. And it kills me how many people have chosen to dislike this movie and to try to rip it apart. I can understand the criticism where people were like they wanted something new and wanted something to go.
It's such a minority. It really.
You're right,
I mean, of course,
well,
the money speaks for itself.
Yeah.
You know.
I have a few buddies. I believe you have met Frank before. He's a very big Star Wars fan, and he's like, there are things I don't like, but overall, this is a fantastic movie.
Yep. Well, and one of our biggest critics that we were concerned with, our friend Tom, who has no question patterned his life after Han Solo. When we went to watch my second time watching it, he was in the theater, right? We're watching with him. We're seeing he's in it. He's loving it, the whole thing, right? And he's a critic. He's one of those guys who's like nobody's as much nerd as I am. I know the details, but he's that kind of nerd about it. And so we're going through and we kept looking at him like, man, we know what's coming. How's he going to deal with it? And so as soon as Han dies, right? We're watching. As soon as Han dies, I don't even know if he made a sound, but you could just look at his face. He was just like, you could tell he was mad, but he didn't say anything, right? He was just looking. And then all of a sudden, when he tosses him off and Chewie roars and starts shooting, Tom couldn't contain himself, and he yelled out in the theater like top of his lungs. He basically was like, "Yeah, you get him, Chewie. Do him. Do them all, Chewie. Do them. Get him for Han."
See, that's what I was wanting. I wanted to see some like Matrix action, like skulls being smashed together by a Wookiee, and dude, I wanted more. I wanted some rage.
Well, but I mean, at least it was great to see Tom at least have that outpouring, right? Because,
yeah.
And he couldn't contain himself. He was so good through the movie, and that's he just couldn't stop himself.
Here's how I imagine Tom watching that movie. He gets halfway through it, and he goes, bunch of superstitious mumbo jumbo and nonsense, and then proceeds to play like Street Fighter on his phone.
Well, so the Tom I'm talking about isn't Tom Bad Guy. But
I need to ask him if he's seen this movie.
See what he thought. Mine was another Tom that I know who, again, major fan. And afterwards, at least that Tom that I talked about, he was able to come in and kind of say, like, well, I understood why they did it. Pushes the plot forward. And just like Missing said, it's a setup. It sets the stage for everything that's to come from Disney. So yes, plot was very derivative, but it was, we're not remaking the prequels, we're making a new Star Wars movie. And here's the new characters, here's where we are in the universe. Yes, it's the same overall plotline going forward, but man, isn't it fun. And here we are ready for what all these amazing new things could happen. And
Yeah,
that's
like I
how
said, it's the
visualize
overture
it.
to the symphony.
Yeah,
It's
really,
the opening curtain.
really is. And so that's basically what I have to talk about Star Wars today. I am more than happy now that we've let it out of the bag to continue to have discussions about it as people feel the need or they experience new things. And just to kind of get into more about what really went on with this movie and what we hope to see in the next stuff. I had a ball. I look forward to everything they're going to be doing with the franchise. So far, they're on my high point. I think, personally, it's the best Star Wars movie made to date. And it's just the pacing, the acting, the overall quality of this movie. You can argue plot and such like that, but beyond that, I think they earned so much of the things that people had criticism with. If you had a criticism, I argue to kind of say, go watch it again and see if you can't see where they already set it up or they earned that moment. Because they didn't. I don't think they did it cheap for any of it.
People are fearing that Lucas wasn't in charge of this one, and I think it was for the better.
Oh god, it showed, and I think everybody was like, yeah. Which also puts up that I've heard some rumor that people are trying to do a call out to have Lucas direct one of the future ones, like Episode 9.
You know,
I really say don't you dare.
No,
Lucas had problems with this film. He did.
Yeah,
He
Lucas
genuinely
specifically
had
said
problems with
he
the
did
way
not
this was
like
directed.
The Force Awakens. He did not like where they went with it. He wanted something new. Like a lot of people argue, they wanted new plot, new way of direction. But the problem was, George, you done effed it up so bad with the prequels, we couldn't get the next movie. We had to have this movie. We had to have the bridge, the somewhat of a reset without being a true reboot, to get the taint that you put on the whole series out of our mouths and out of our eyes. Because you done effed it up so bad.
I've heard that originally on the first original movies, the first 3 originals, he did have limits and guidelines to go by. And when episode 1, 2, and 3 came out, he was like, okay, these movies are mine now, and I'm going to do with them what I want. And that's when they got bad.
The originals, he had others help him write it, edit it, fact check him, make sure continuity, direct it. He only really did the first one himself. He had a friend do the second one, do Empire, which is why a lot of people argue it's the best. And the third one, he had a basically child come out that really hadn't done anything, and he helped kind of direct through the sidelines. But you got a better movie because he had more people involved with it. This and the prequels, he spent so much time trying to control it that it became what it was. And so that's what it is. I hope would never see Lucas do anything with Star Wars again. I like
the fans. The fans knew what they want, and Disney listened to the fans.
And we got a fun, action-packed movie.
I've said this before. Lucas needs to take. It slips my mind. Who wrote the Harry Potters?
Shoot.
Rowling? J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling.
Rowling, after she was done, said, "Here, people, it's yours. Go with it." He needs to follow her lead, and he needs to. Well, instead of following her lead, where she said, "Here, folks, it's yours now. Enjoy." He had to literally divorce himself from Star Wars or be divorced from Star Wars. He's divorced from Star Wars now, and we just move on.
Yeah. Oh, the pain otherwise. So, all right. I think that's covered a big, I need to get off my chest what we're talking about Star Wars because not talking about it has been painful to me. I feel like I could have had a better show with it too if I kept myself in better order what I talked about. But I think we mostly covered everything I was concerned with. So feel free to talk to me openly about Star Wars from this point forward. I'm happy to talk about it. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to what's next. That's kind of my whole thing. So I really want to thank you guys for joining me today and talking about this. It's time for us to give up the networks so other shows can get on and so the stream back together. Yes, Kuro,
I've got one off the topic thing. Tom Bad Guy and I have been discussing rebooting Tort. And eventually, one of these days, you guys might hear a new Tort episode from us. We're in the process of working out our schedules and trying to figure out.
I have had a lot of people ask me about the state of Tort.
Bring Tort back.
I would love to hear that. I would love to see Tort back.
I'm glad to hear people would like to see Tort
miss
back.
it.
I miss it. I miss it myself. It's fun to record, and hopefully everybody likes hearing it. So hopefully one of these days we will have a new episode out.
Copy of Bruce too.
Yes.
Since this last week, another sad side note I'd like to bring up.
Yeah, we do have to bring up that this has already been, as the meme online that I think best captured it, 2016, brought to you by George R.R. Martin as the director of 2016, because we have already lost too many wonderful, talented people.
Too many. We've already been sad so far, but hopefully that's the end of the sadness for the year. So.
Yeah, we shall see. And yes, we loved everything they did. Honestly, Alan Rickman, on top of seeing David Bowie die, was very unfortunate and kind of just adds to the, like, but, so good.
Rip Goblin King, rip.
Yes. And right when we were talking about having another Labyrinth or something come out. Oh, so sad. But, yeah, that's the selfish side. But, yeah, anyhow. So with that, thank you everybody for watching and listening to Show X today. As we did our special all Star Wars spoilers, let's finally get off our chest Star Wars edition. We'll come back to you with regular shows starting again next week, where Ken will not be with us next week, but I should be here. So, and from that, after that, we should be here most of the time again.
Everybody give money on Patreon. Yeah, I do.
Patreon does help. We do have to pay for the bills of the new stream, especially if we suddenly have to pick up our own shoutcasting, since I haven't worked it out with Gnomewise fully yet. And so as we pick that up, Patreon does help. Big fans, big friends, as well as it allow us to buy the final Sam Broadcaster licenses we need to get me back on the big rig, since I finally figured out how to turn off my fan noise. Finally, with updates. Yeah. Thank goodness, I can finally get on the Yeti again instead of my decent M-Audio mic here. So, all right, everybody. With that, you've been listening to Show X and VTW Productions.com. Please listen to all the shows on the network. Please listen to all the shows on Alpha Geek Radio. We love those guys, and we simulcast with them, and they give us the bandwidth there. We also would love you to check out us on @DocDead for my Twitter account, which I talked about doing the show and asked for people to come join me. The VTW Show X account, and GoHex for all of ours. For you guys, what are your Twitter accounts? Thank you for joining me today, by the way.
@GuroDinSetsu on Twitter.
@Hando VTW.
Outstanding, sirs. And as always, please give us feedback. We want to know what you want to hear and what you thought of the shows we had, and any discussion points you have about things we've said. Just send it in to the show at showx@vtwproductions.com. We read all your emails, and we really think it helps us do our show. So with that,
join the IRC chat.
Oh yeah, IRC chat, always fun, and it helps us talk to the show each day. So, and if you have things you disagree with my theories or things you hate about Star Wars, hit us up. We'll actually talk to it in the future here. And more than happy to hear your guys' theories. I'd love to hear some of the best origin story theories that people have, because there's a lot going around. Like I said, my job has been mostly to debunk people who said this movie was bad for any reason. Personal vendetta, personal reason and goal of mine. But beyond that, I do like to hear people theorize about other things with it. So I love it. All right, that's it. I got to give up the network. So thank you all very much for listening. We'll catch you again next week. Have a good time. As I get to the right buttons and everything now that I've been talking so long.
Goodbye. See you in the next zombie. Good night.